Chapter 503. Finally, after some discussion, Watergate, Nara Shikaku, Xianxia Chun, and Mito Menitis came up with a solution to the 5 Kages conference. In any case, Woodleaf must participate in this 5 Kages conference. After all, this 5 Kages conference was held to fight against the Akatsuki. Woodleaf, as the ninja village that suffered the most damage from the Akatsuki, and also the ninja village that caused the most damage to the Akatsuki, Woodleaf must not be evaded. Since they can't evade, then they must face it bravely. It's nothing more than dealing with every move that comes their way. Based on the fact that during this period of time, those big and small forces only dared to secretly use some small means to make Konoha feel disgusted, presumably, nothing too excessive will happen in this 5 Kage summit. The people who participate in the 5 Kages conference can bring 2 personal guards. Generally speaking, they will bring 1 person with superior strength and 1 person with superior intelligence to participate in the 5 Kages conference. But the personnel can't be transferred so casually. After all, a Kage leaving the village still has to leave a certain amount of defense force for the village. After careful consideration, Watergate finally decided on his 2 followers. People who can use their brains are very easy to find. In the Nara clan, there is a ready-made existence with wisdom far beyond ordinary people, Nara Shikamu. But as a follower who can show off his strength, it's not so easy to find. After all, almost all of Woodleaf's high-end combat power has received missions to earn rewards, in order to offset the malicious influence of other forces. As for the few ninjas left in Woodleaf, Watergate can't choose them to participate in the 5 Kages conference. After all, Woodleaf itself has to leave some guards, right? When Watergate, Xianxia Chun, and Mito Menitis were still thinking about the second follower, Nara Shikaku opened his mouth and then closed it again. Seeing Nara Shikaku's hesitation, Watergate said to Nara Shikaku, "Shikaku, if you have someone in mind, you can say it. After all, it's not easy to decide on a candidate. If you think of a suitable candidate, you can also say it." Hearing Watergate's words, Xianxia Chun and Mito Menitis also turned their heads and looked at Nara Shikaku. They want to see what kind of suitable candidate Nara Shikaku can propose that won't lose the face of Woodleaf. Seeing the 3 looking at him together, Shikaku's face flashed a trace of helplessness. Then he said to Watergate, "So we decided to let my son, Shikamaru Nara, who doesn't have a big reputation in the shinobi world, as a member of the entourage, then the other person must already have a big reputation in the shinobi world. And such people in Woodleaf can be counted on one hand. It's nothing more than Sharingan Kakashi, Blue Beast Mike Guy, and if one level up, then it's naturally Woodleaf Sanin or Woodleaf Yama." When Nara Shikaku said the name Woodleaf Yama, Xianxia Chun and Mito Menitis' eyes flashed with light. Why did they forget about such an existence? Although Nangongja wasn't that famous among the younger generation, Nangongja wasn't that famous. But for all the ninjas who participated in the Third Shinobi World War, Nangongja is a star that can't be ignored. Whether it's Nangongja's casual killing method on the battlefield, or his excellent leadership skills in the war after that, Nangongja is one of the best. Although Nangongja has been living in seclusion in the past few years, once such a strong person comes out again, it's a big news for the ninja world and Woodleaf village. And Nangongja, who is close to a killing star, coming out again is enough to suppress some people who have evil intentions and want to bite off a piece of meat from Woodleaf village. It's really a win-win situation. Anyway, Nangongja has been living in seclusion in the Woodleaf village for the past few years. As a Woodleaf ninja, he hasn't contributed to his village. Now that the Hokage and the elders have given orders to Nangongja, a Woodleaf ninja, Nangongja has a reason to resist? But compared to the excited Xianxia Chun and Mito Menitis, Watergate's face had a somewhat inexplicable strange smile. After all, Mito Menitis and Xianxia Chun don't know, but as his confidant, Shikaku Nara should understand the close relationship between Nangongja and Woodleaf village. If he wants Nangongja to agree to his conditions, he must pay a price, and it's an extremely high price. Isn't it a bit of a loss just to let Nangongja go out? Hokai-sama, Shikaku Nara's words are reasonable. Hokai-sama, please consider it carefully. If necessary, we elders of Kiba are willing to co-sign your order to recruit Nangongja. Looking at Watergate, Mito Menitis said excitedly to Watergate. Minato could only look at Shikaku Nara with a little bit of complaint. After all, the relationship between Nangongja and Konoha couldn't be directly mentioned, otherwise, it would have a great negative impact on the relationship between Konoha and Minato. Now Shikaku Nara mentioned Nangongja's name in front of Mito Menitis and Xianxia Chun, two people who are older but not smarter. Such behavior is no different from putting Watergate on the fire. Watergate finally understood why Shikaku Nara was like that before. Indeed, if it was just Watergate and Shikaku here, Shikaku Nara will directly propose such an option for Watergate's reference. But now that Mito Menitis and Xianxia Chun are here, Watergate forced Shikaku Nara to say such a thing. Isn't this directly raising such a proposal to the level of a decision? Looking at what Mito Menitis just said, isn't he preparing to use Watergate's power as Hokage and the power of the Elders of Kiba to pressure Nangongja and force Nangongja to participate in the 5 Kage tournament together with Watergate? All of this is really a bit unexpected, but Watergate can't just directly say to Mito Menitis and Xianxia Chun, Nangongja won't go with me unconditionally, just give up. So Watergate can only nod and smile at Mito Menitis and Xianxia Chun. Chapter 504. After finally sending back the 2 Elders of Kiba advisors, Mito Menitis and Xianxia Chun, back, Watergate signaled Shikaku Nara to stay. After closing the office door, Shikaku Nara sat opposite Watergate under Watergate's signal. Shikaku, although I know that letting Nangongja become my follower and participate in the 5 Kage summit with me is a good opportunity to show the strength of our Woodleaf village, all of this is based on the premise that Nangongja is willing to listen to my orders. If we want Nangongja to listen to my orders, we must pay a price that is enough to move him. Shikaku, I don't know if this price is worth it in your opinion? Watergate knew that with Shikaku's high IQ, he would never casually say something that shouldn't be said in front of Mito Menitis and Xianxia Chun. Maybe, just maybe, Shikaku Nara's goal wasn't to let Nangongja participate in the 5 Kage summit under the double pressure of Bokaze Watergate, Mito Menitis, and Xianxia Chun, but also to provoke the conflict between the Elders of Kiba and Nangongja. After all, from Nangongja's perspective, Bokaze Watergate, who was familiar with his relationship with the Woodleaf village, would never use such a stupid move to force him to do something he didn't want to do. Since it wasn't Bokaze Watergate, the only people who could force him to do this were Mito Menitis and Xianxia Chun, who also jointly signed the appointment letter, who represented the Elders of Kiba. Perhaps this wouldn't directly cause an unpredictable large-scale conflict between Nangongja and the Elders of Kiba, but once this kind of disgust took root in his heart, it was difficult to easily disappear. When the time came, Watergate would pay a certain price to appease Nangongja and appropriately condemn the Elders of Kiba's rash behavior. On one hand, this kind of behavior could strengthen the relationship with Nangongja, and on the other hand, it could also suppress the Elders of Kiba, who seemed to be a little restless recently. Wasn't it killing 2 birds with 1 stone? Of course, it's worth it, and I think that maybe Nangongja won't put forward any excessive conditions. After all, this is a rare scene in the shinobi world where all the kages of the 5 great villages are gathered together. We all know that there is a force behind Nangongja. This kind of meeting will cause a sensation in the shinobi world, but at the same time, it is also a secret meeting. Any information that doesn't seem so eye-catching will be of great value. Isn't all of this the biggest temptation for Nangongja? Sure enough, Shikaku Nara had actually seen through the clues. The so-called price, under Shikaku's description, directly became a qualification for participation that didn't have any practical significance. Watergate knew that what he needed to do now was to find the right time to appease Nangongja. After understanding what he needed to do, Watergate's heart gradually calmed down. After chatting with Shikaku about some trivial matters, and talking about the performance of Shikamaru and Naruto these days, Watergate even personally sent Shikaku out of the Hokage's office. After sending Shikaku away, Watergate sat at his desk for a long time without speaking. As the leader of an organization, it's indeed a good thing that his subordinates have extraordinary abilities, but once such a subordinate even includes himself as the leader in his plan, it's not necessarily a good thing. Shikaku Nara. Because your intelligence is still very useful, I still have a certain tolerance for you, but once one day your sacrifice exceeds my tolerance, Shikaku Nara, who had just walked out of the Hokage's office, suddenly felt a chill on his back. This feeling full of danger immediately made Shikaku Nara reflect on his words and deeds. The more he thought about it, the more his heart palpitated. He seemed to have said too much and thought too much. Over the years, as a woodleaf, Watergate's thoughts have become more and more unpredictable. But just now, he still subconsciously treated Watergate with the same attitude he used to treat Watergate. It's a bit dangerous to do so. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Once he acts too smart, and even uses his intelligence in places where it shouldn't be used, he will really be abandoned. Shikaku Nara is very good at playing shogi. In a game of shogi, patience and intelligence are equally important. Be sure to remember. Be sure to remember. In Nangongji's mansion, Nangongji was holding a mission scroll in his hand. The expression on his face can be said to be wonderful. He didn't expect that although he lived in the woodleaf, he would actually receive a mission scroll signed by both the Hokage and the elders. Did the fourth Hokage lose his mind? After taking the mission scroll from Nangongji with a strange look on his face, Mishiro couldn't help but say to Nangongji. After all, at the back of the scroll, Minato Watergate's name was written so conspicuously. But Nangongji shook his head and pointed to the signatures of Mito Menitis and Zhuan Xiaochun, which were closely followed by Minato Watergate's signature, to Mishiro. Mishiro, the real point is here. Nangongji's eyes were full of wisdom, and he said to Mishiro, it seems that the elders of Kiba, these arrogant politicians, are going to court death or provoke someone they shouldn't provoke, right? This scroll is a ploy to create estrangement between me and the elders of Kiba. The person who can come up with such a ploy in the woodleaf is very likely to be the current head of the Nara clan, Shikaku Nara. Who doesn't know that after the birds are gone, the hound is cooked? The more Shikaku Nara does now, the more miserable his end will be. After Watergate ascended to the position of Hokage, he was no longer a simple ninja like before. Now he is a cold-blooded and ruthless politician. As long as it is to eliminate threats and obtain benefits, there is almost nothing that Watergate can't do. I hope that Shikaku Nara won't be so short-sighted. He will really see that the current Watergate is not the same as before. After Nangongji sighed, he looked at the order to become the follower of the Fire Country's Hokage, and his eyes were shining. Chapter 505. Casually throwing the scroll with the signature of the highest level of Konoha to the side, Nangongji looked at Mishiro and said with a solemn expression, "That's right. Don't worry. For the time being, we don't need to pay attention to such a mission scroll. It won't take long for Minato to come directly to apologize, and then put all the shit on the heads of the elders of Konoha. It's really interesting. If I wasn't the leader of a force like the Blood Clothing Pavilion and didn't know such little tricks, I'm sure I would have been toyed with in the palm of your hand." When Nangongji spoke, there was no anger on his face. Instead, there was an inexplicable smile on his face. Such a smile looked like the smile of a person sitting in the audience watching an actor on the stage trying his best to perform a burlesque. Because of the actor's antics, he felt a mixture of contempt and IQ-crushing smile. When Mishiro saw the smile on Nangongji's face, he knew that Nangongji already knew what was going on, so he didn't say anything else. Sure enough, after seeing that Nangongji received the mission scroll but didn't have the reaction that Watergate and Shikaku expected, Watergate finally couldn't sit still. After all, the date of the Five Shadows Conference was getting closer and closer. It wasn't easy to get Nangongji to be his follower, and he had also made a lot of arrangements. If he were to change the person at the last minute, it would be troublesome. After all, Nangongji is also an important part of Watergate and Shikaku's plan to show the power of Woodleaf Ninja Village. Please don't blame me for coming uninvited. After knocking on the door of Nangongji's house, Nangongji, as the head of the family, opened the door for Watergate, who was standing at the door. After seeing Nangongji, Watergate didn't have the slightest arrogance of a Hokage. Instead, he was very polite to Nangongji and said, "Hokage-sama is too polite. As the leader of Woodleaf Ninja Village, I'm flattered that you can take the time to come to the residence of an insignificant ninja like me. Don't just stand at the door, otherwise, Wouldn't the Nangong family be laughed at for being rude? Please come in. After making a gesture to Watergate, Nangongja led Watergate into his house. Although the communication between the two seemed to be very polite and close, a sense of alienation and rejection was so obvious. In fact, whether it was Watergate or Nangongja, both of them knew that from the moment they met, they had already begun to plot against each other. But whether it was Watergate or Nangongja, they didn't exclude this kind of behavior from each other. After all, whether it was Nangongja or Watergate, both of them stood at the top of power. Although it doesn't sound good, in fact, it was a behavior that could never be avoided. In order to get the benefits they want, everyone will, intentionally or unintentionally, calculate others or themselves. All of this is understandable. Nangongja and Watergate walked into the living room together. At the same time, the two of them tacitly didn't mention anything related to the Five Shadow Summit. Instead, they began to chat about their daily lives. From the situation at home to Naruto's performance these days, the two of them were waiting to see who could resist the desire in their hearts more. It turned out that Watergate was indeed slightly inferior. It wasn't that Watergate's temperament was much worse than Nangongja's, it was just that the two of them faced different things. For Nangongja, the so-called Five Shadows Summit was indeed somewhat valuable. However, even if he didn't go, it wouldn't be difficult for him to find out what kind of agreement was reached in this summit with the help of the Blood Garment Pavilion's intelligence collection system. But it was different for Watergate. During this period of time, various methods from large and small forces had been used openly and secretly. In fact, Watergate was already a little tired of dealing with them. The incidents caused by these people may not be a big deal, but each one was more troublesome than the previous one. As the Hokage, Watergate couldn't let his energy be tied up in these trivial nonsense. Watergate really needed a ninja like Nangongja, who was beyond the ordinary Jounin level, to establish the scene of Woodleaf being full of talents and masters. Watergate couldn't help but look at Nangongja, who was sitting opposite him with a calm expression. He didn't know why, but there was a feeling of humiliation in his heart. After all, Watergate, who was in a high position, actually had to beg others. This was unacceptable for the proud Watergate, but he had been forced by the current situation to lower his proud head. I came this time not only to chat with you, but also to apologize to you. Hearing Watergate's words, Nangongja's heart flashed a trace of understanding. The real show had just begun. Although he already understood Watergate's meaning, Nangongja couldn't show such emotions. After all, it was simply a direct slap to Watergate's face. I don't know why the Hokage came to apologize to a nobody like me. I don't think the Hokage has anything to apologize to me. Nangongja was very respectful to Watergate, as if he really didn't understand why Watergate would apologize to him. Watergate knew that Nangongja actually didn't care whether he was willing to apologize or not. What Nangongja wanted to know was what price he was willing to pay. Watergate, who had the idea of getting something for nothing, what price could he offer to make Nangongja move? In fact, Minato had already discussed the countermeasures with Shikaku Nara before coming here. According to the investigation of the Woodleaf Umbu, the original root leader, Woodleaf trader Shimura Danzo, was in the Land of Iron a few days ago. The Land of Iron is the designated location for the 5 Kage Summit. Although it's not completely certain what Shimura Danzo's intentions are, Shimura Danzo himself is a person who won't act until he sees a rabbit. There must be a reason for him to appear in the Land of Iron. Yes, Nangongja may not care about anything, but for the Woodleaf trader Shimura Danzo, who destroyed his stable life and kidnapped his family, he must have great hostility. Once he hears Danzo's movements, Nangongja will certainly not be able to maintain his current calm state of mind. It has to be said that Shikaku Nara is really a genius. Chapter 506. After hearing Danzo's name, Nangongja remained calm, but Mashiro, who had been sitting beside Nangongja and Watergate, had a strange expression on his face. Although Mashiro had deliberately buried the fact that she was sent to Nangongja's side as a member of Root to monitor him, she had to admit that this matter was a heart-wrenching pain for her. She might not show it on her usual self, but once someone mentioned it, she definitely couldn't remain calm. Looking at Mishiro's slightly pale face and his trembling hands, Nangongja couldn't help but feel distressed. Because Mishiro didn't receive any ninja training when he was en route, he only received training as an intelligence officer, so he didn't have much access to information. Almost everyone en route had received the seal of Tungbane, but it wasn't used on Mishiro. But almost all the brainwashing processes en route were used on Mishiro, and the fear of route was deeply rooted in Mishiro's heart. Even now, Mishiro was very emotional that he was able to overcome the fear in his heart and chose to stand on Nangongja's side. Just when Mishiro's heart was still trembling, a warm feeling suddenly wrapped around Mishiro's trembling hands. This warm feeling went straight from Mishiro's arms to Mishiro's heart, and this warmth directly restored Mishiro's usual calm and intellectual feeling. Mishiro knew that this kind of reassuring strength could only come from one person, and it was the person who pulled him out from root and allowed him to live an ordinary and happy life, his Miyagi, Nangongja. Slowly raising his head, Mishiro's eyes met Nangongja's eyes. Although Nangongja didn't say a word, Mishiro knew that no matter how uneasy he was, the person who could calm him down must be the person who was holding his hand. "Don't worry, I'm here." After Nangongja nodded to Mishiro, he looked at Watergate, who was sitting opposite him. Who would have thought that Minato would be able to leave such a trump card in his hands? Nangongja didn't doubt the authenticity of this information. After all, Watergate should be very clear in his heart that he had an extremely capable intelligence network in his hands. As long as he wanted to verify it, he would definitely be able to verify it. Although he had a grudge against Watergate for using such a method in front of Mishiro, Nangongja couldn't understand Watergate's actions. After all, Mishiro's direct action was more powerful than passing this kind of information directly to him. Watergate knew how much he cherished his family. Starting from what he cherished the most, Watergate had indeed matured into a qualified politician and wasn't as stubborn as before. "I'll go to the 5 Kages tournament, and I'll accept the title of a follower. But I'll just show my face there, I won't make a move. Even if I make a move, it will be because of Danzo, this is my condition." Hearing Nangongja's words, Watergate's face also hung a smile. Even if Nangongja won't make a move, Watergate's purpose has already been achieved. If he really needs to fight, in fact, Watergate himself is very confident that he can survive among the 4 Kages. If Watergate uses Sage Mode, everything will end faster. So things like fighting don't need Nangongja's direct participation. Watergate only needs Nangongja's reputation in the ninja world. After a brief discussion with Nangongja about the matters related to the 5 Kages tournament, the meeting place and the departure time, Watergate left Nangongja's house with satisfaction. After seeing Watergate off at the gate, Nangongja slowly walked back to his house. Mishiro was sitting in the living room at the moment. Although Nangongja temporarily comforted Mishiro, such a thing involving a very deep psychological problem can't be solved in a short time. After Watergate came, Little Linger and Nangong-ro, who have been hiding in their rooms, both came to Mishiro's side. The two girls hugged Mishiro, who has always been like an elder sister, and softly comforted him. Nangongja also nodded after seeing this. Nangongja knows that comforting people like this is not something he is good at. Since Little Linger and Nangong-ro have taken on this task, it is naturally better. Nangongja directly returned to his room and picked up the Heaven's Retribution sword that he placed on the shelf. He casually picked up a soft white cloth and began to slowly wipe the Heaven's Retribution sword's pitch-black spine with some cracks. Although there was a cloth between them, Nangongja could still clearly feel the cold touch of the Heaven's Retribution sword. Could it be that Nangongja wasn't angry at all? Of course not. In terms of hatred for Danzo, Nangongja was not weaker than anyone. However, at that time, Watergate was sitting opposite him, and Mishiro was sitting beside him. At this time, Nangongja absolutely can't lose his mind. Therefore, Nangongja forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart. On one hand, he could make Mishiro feel at ease, and on the other hand, he could make Watergate unable to see through his thoughts. It was only when there was no one around him that Nangongja was able to let out all the emotions in his heart. At this moment, although Nangongja doesn't seem to have anything special, once someone can get close to Nangongja, they can immediately feel a chill from the depths of their bones. But unlike this bone-chilling cold, Nangong's eyes at this moment seemed to be ignited with a blazing flame, burning the body and soul. At this moment, it seems that he is looking for the next target to be burned by such a raging flame. Then, I accidentally let you escape in the past, and there has been no news about you for many years. I thought that you would live like a cockroach in the ninja world. But I didn't expect that you would actually start to come out and cause trouble again. In that case, I naturally can't turn a blind eye to it. This 5 Kages convention will be the end of your life. The hand holding the white cloth involuntarily exerted force, and the sharp blade of the Heaven's Retribution sword directly cut through the cloth. Even Nangong's finger was cut, but Nangong seemed to be completely unmoved and just quietly held his sword. Chapter 507. Stop, show me your ID. In the land of iron, outside the venue of the 5 Kage tournament, 2 people wearing iron armor and a katana at their waist stopped 3 figures in white. The land of iron itself is a country that is good at forging, and the main fighting force in this country is not ninja, but a new type of samurai that cooperates with the chakra sword technique. Hearing the words of the 2 people in front of them who are obviously the maintenance staff of the 5 Kage tournament, the 3 figures in white slowly took off the hood that completely wrapped their heads. The person in the lead has a long golden hair, and his face has a very comfortable and warm smile, and behind this person with golden hair, there is a young man with onion hair, and his eyes flashed with wisdom from time to time. The person on the other side has a very soft long black hair, starry eyes and sword-like eyebrows, looking very imposing, and on the back of this person, there is a dark sword hilt that looks very conspicuous. As the maintenance staff of the venue, the portraits of the main participants of this conference have naturally been handed over to them early on. Moreover, in front of the 2 of them, in addition to the person with long black hair, they were wearing the iconic Konoha forehead protector on their foreheads at the moment. Hokuto-sama, welcome to the 5 Kage tournament, please come in. After entering, there will be a special person to arrange accommodation for you and your entourage. When all the Kage have arrived, the 5 Kage tournament will be held as scheduled. Hearing the voices of the 2 new samurai, Watergate also maintained his warm smile and nodded to the 2 people, then walked into the venue of the 5 Kage tournament with Shikamaru Nara and Nangong behind him. Looking at the figure of Watergate and his party leaving, the 2 samurai in charge of the reception can't help but quietly get together, whispering to each other. 4th Hokusama, Minato Namikaze is really as good as the rumors say. Unlike the 4th Raikage of the Cloud Village who came first, that arrogant look is simply uncomfortable to the extreme. Although we are a small country, we shouldn't be ignored like this, right? Hearing his companion suddenly began to say such words, the other samurai quickly reached out his hand to cover his companion's mouth, and said anxiously to his companion, "Don't talk nonsense. Don't talk nonsense." The 4th Raikage of the Cloud Village is famous for his bad temper. Once what you just said reaches his ears, can you still save your life? Although we still have a certain fighting power compared to ordinary people, we are still worthless in front of a Kage. Hearing his companion's words, the obviously talkative warrior nodded his head to indicate that he understood. He let his companion release his hand from his mouth and took a deep breath of the slightly cold fresh air. The talkative warrior then said to his companion, "Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a chance. You're not going to give me a chance. Don't worry, I naturally. Only you and I are here, that's why I dare to say these words. But I don't know the identity of the 2 followers who came here with Watergate, that Tsuchikage of the Rock Village who came here before also brought his own granddaughter. Now the season is approaching late winter, and the Land of Iron is a country located in the northern part of the continent, so it has been snowing a lot during this period of time. Even the ground is covered with a thick layer of snow at this moment. In such cold weather, the 2 samurai can't just stand here stupidly. A little chat can be regarded as a way to relieve some loneliness. Hearing that his companion didn't ask any sensitive questions, the samurai who seems to be quite steady was also happy to chat with his companion. If I'm not wrong, that seems to be Shikamaru Nara, the son of Woodleaf's think tank, Shikaku Nara. Although he doesn't have any special achievements in these years, and he is only a chunin, he has been assisting his father in some Woodleaf matters. It seems that this boy is the follower selected by Watergate to act as the think tank, which is very appropriate. Most of the followers of the 5 Kage Conference follow a combination of one scholar and one warrior. Since Shikamaru Nara is obviously not a person who can represent the strength of Woodleaf, the one who can represent the strength of Woodleaf naturally falls on the person with long black hair and sharp eyebrows. Then is the person who didn't wear the Woodleaf headband the person selected by Watergate to represent the strength of Woodleaf? But I don't seem to have heard of a person with such characteristics among the strong people of Woodleaf. After the samurai heard the steady samurai's words, he immediately said impatiently. And after the steady samurai heard the words of the samurai, his eyes flashed with a trace of reminiscence, and then he said to the samurai, "I'm not sure if I really recognize the identity of this person after all. This person has been living in seclusion for a long time. In the past 10 years, there have been no rumors about him in the ninja world, but just now the black sword hilt exposed from his white cloak made me vaguely recognize his identity. If I have to describe it, maybe it can only be described as living in legends, as well as the memory of people's fear. This kind of appearance is more appropriate. After all, this person is called Yama of Woodleaf, a legend that has been hidden in the long river of time." Woodleaf Yama? Such a name suddenly broke into the mind of the samurai. The memory of rescue that was sleeping in the samurai's memory was slowly awakened. What is Woodleaf thinking, actually pulling such a peerless strong person, a peerless beast back into the ninja world? Is this just a simple demonstration of power? This is simply a preparation for a direct battle. Watergate and Watergate, together with Nangongja, such a combination can easily crush all the ninjas and samurai here. Looking at the direction of Watergate's group, whether it was the samurai or the steady samurai at this moment, their hearts were full of worry at this moment. If it wasn't for his fierce reputation, if it wasn't for his cruelty and ruthlessness, how could Nangongja be crowned with the name of Yama, which is full of death aura? This 5 Kage convention, after just seeing such a participant, is already full of a kind of tribulation. Chapter 508. This 5 Kage tournament is the first 5 Kage tournament since the shinobi world was pacified and the establishment of the 5 major villages. It can be said that it is an event of great historical significance. As the host country, the Land of Iron is naturally well prepared. In order to prevent the Kage from doing anything in private before the 5 Kage tournament, the Land of Iron has arranged for each Kage and their 2 attendants to be scattered, enough to ensure that there won't be any situation where 2 Kage from 2 villages meet in advance to form an alliance before all 5 Kage arrive. On the second day after Watergate, Nangongja and Shikamaru Nara arrived at the Land of Iron's venue. The samurai of the Land of Iron came to inform Watergate's group that all the Kage from the 5 major villages have arrived and decided the time for the official meeting. Although there is still plenty of time, Watergate didn't relax. After instructing Shikamaru Nara and Nangongja to make a short preparation, Watergate directly took Nangongja and Shikamaru Nara to the venue of the 5 Kage tournament. After all, Nangongja has seen a lot of big scenes, so he didn't have any special feelings for such a scene. Such a 5 Kage tournament is actually a game between the Kage of the 5 major villages. Although Nangongja also knows how to exchange benefits and speculate about each other, he is too lazy to use his mind in such a place. Nangongja's goal from beginning to end is the information about Shimura Danzo that Watergate mentioned. On the contrary, Shikamaru Nara, who has always looked young and mature, at this moment, his eyes were a little erratic. From his slightly disordered breathing and abnormal trembling of his muscles, this child must have accumulated a lot of pressure. But at this moment, Watergate began to think about how to deal with the Kage of the other ninja villages in a while. How can he pay attention to the psychology of Shikamaru Nara, who is just a substitute for Shikamaru Nara? Although Nangongja doesn't care whether Woodleaf Village will lose face because of Shikamaru's obviously not calm performance, but seeing the boy embarrassed in front of him, Nangongja can't help but say, "Shikamaru, what's wrong? Are you a little nervous?" Hearing Nangongja's words, Shikamaru's was like a child who had just done a prank and was suddenly discovered. An indescribable embarrassment filled Shikamaru's face. But after all, he was a member of the Nara family. Naturally, he quickly discovered his gaffe and concealed his emotions. Shikamaru said to Nangong Tetsu. "Thank you, Nangong-sama's concern, I didn't," Shikamaru said halfway, but his eyes met Nangong's eyes. Shikamaru thought that his loss of self-control would be disdained by Nangongja, but at this moment, Nangongja's eyes were only filled with endless calmness and a little bit of concern. Shikamaru Nara's words that he wanted to cover up were all suppressed in his stomach. After nodding helplessly, Shikamaru said to Nangongja, "Nangongja, I'm sorry to let Nangong-sama see this. After all, although I helped father to deal with some insignificant woodleaf affairs, but this kind of meeting with the 5 most powerful people in the ninja world really makes me feel inexplicable fear in my heart. After all, I'm not only a junior from the Nara clan, but I also represent the new generation of woodleaf. To be honest, I'm very afraid that because of some of my actions, my companions and woodleaf will lose face." Shikamaru's words were very serious. It takes a lot of courage to say all the fear and uneasiness in his heart. And for people with such courage, Nangongja is very appreciative. With a little bit of concern, Nangongja walked to Shikamaru's side and put his hand on Shikamaru's shoulder. After patting him gently, he said to Shikamaru, "In fact, you don't have to be so nervous. Although it sounds like the Kage of the 5 great ninja villages are unreachable and otherworldly. But don't be misled by such emotions. The so-called Kage are actually a group of ordinary people. They are also ordinary people who will be angry, sad, calculative, and confused. If you directly remove the identity of Kage that shrouds them, maybe you will find that some of them are not as smart as you, and not as serious as you." Although Watergate was not far in front of him, Nangongja still said this to Shikamaru. With the powerful strength of Watergate, even if Nangongja whispered in Shikamaru's ear, he can still hear it clearly, not to mention the conversation between Nangongja and Shikamaru. But at this moment, not only did Watergate talk to Nangongja with his identity as Kage, but after hearing Nangongja's words, he also nodded slightly. As Nangongja said, "Ki is not a god. As a human, he will naturally make mistakes and do all kinds of stupid things." At this moment, although it seems that Nangongja is talking to Shikamaru, but isn't he also talking to Watergate? After all, although Watergate seems to be in a good state at this moment, he has always been a friendly person. At this moment, Watergate didn't come up to comfort Shikamaru at all. It is enough to see that Watergate's heart isn't as calm as he looks on the surface. I didn't expect to be lectured by Nangongja one day. The corners of Shui Men's mouth curled into a smile. Although he was still a little worried about what would happen during the 5 Shadow Summit, his originally heavy footsteps gradually relaxed. Even his speed of advancement became a little faster. Following behind Watergate, Nangongja and Shikamaru naturally walked quickly to the conference hall of the 5 Kage Summit. Nangongja and Shikamaru opened the door of the conference hall, and a strong light emitted from the conference hall. When Watergate, Nangongja, and Shikamaru's eyes adapted to the stimulation of the strong light, the situation in the conference hall was seen by the 3 of them. Watergate deliberately set off early this time, so the conference hall now looked slightly empty. But at this moment, there was already a person sitting in the seat representing the Sunagakure of the Wind Country. The burgundy hair and the thick black circles around the eyes all proved the identity of this person. Sunagakure's 5th generation Kazekage, original Ichibi column force, Gaara. Chapter 509. Hokage-sama. Seeing Watergate, Gaara stood up very politely and saluted to Watergate. In fact, as the Kazekage of Sunagakure, Gaara and Minato were on the same level in terms of status, so they just greeted each other casually. But at this moment, Gaara stood up directly from his seat and saluted Watergate with the etiquette of a junior to a senior. Watergate can understand Gaara's attitude towards him. After all, his child Uzumaki Naruto and Gaara have a close relationship. When Gaara was kidnapped by the Akatsuki, he was able to escape with the help of Woodleaf Village. So Watergate didn't feel any difference in Gaara's attitude at this moment. But although he can understand why Gaara saluted in his heart, Watergate still didn't show any arrogance and greeted Gaara very amiably. It turned out to be the Kazekage. I thought I would be the first one to come, but I didn't expect that the Kazekage has been waiting here for a long time. Hearing Watergate's words, although his smile was quite stiff, Gaara still explained to Watergate. Sunagakure is located in a relatively remote place, and it took a long time to come to the Land of Iron, so I'm actually the last one among the 5 Kage. The reason why the meeting hasn't been held in the past few days is because I was slightly delayed on the way. So when I came here, Mifune-sama said that he would let me have a good rest, but I thought that I have made the Kage wait for so long, so I immediately proposed to hold the 5 Kage conference. Listening to Gaara's words, Watergate finally had time to carefully observe the situation of Gaara, Kankuro, and Temari, who attended the conference with Gaara. Although he was in high spirits, both his face and body carried the air of a traveler after a long journey. After all, Gaara has just become the Kazekage of Sunagakure. Although he has done his best over the years, participating in the 5 Kage conference, which is related to the fate of the entire ninja world, has also caused a certain amount of pressure on Gaara. It is precisely this kind of pressure that directly exposed the shortcomings of Gaara as a new Kage. If there was no one to help him, Gaara would definitely be swallowed up in such a 5 Shadows conference without leaving any bones behind. Just when Watergate opened his mouth and was about to mention the 5th Kazekage of Sunagakure, who has a good relationship with his son and has reached an agreement with Woodleaf Village, a charming and heroic voice came into Watergate and Gaara's ears. "Oh, I didn't expect that the Kage of 2 ninja villages would already have a good chat with each other. I don't know if you two mind if I chat with you to pass the time?" Watergate and Gaara looked at the source of the voice at the same time. A woman with long reddish-brown hair wearing a high-slit skirt was standing at the gate at the moment, looking at Gaara and Watergate, who were talking with interest. The person who spoke to Gaara and Watergate was none other than the 5th Kage of the Mist Village, Terumi Mei, who ended the history of the Mist Village. Behind Terumi Mei, there were 2 attendants. One of them had an eye patch covering one of his eyes, and the other one had blue hair. The other one had a huge weapon tied tightly with a bandage on his back, and the other one had blue hair and had a huge weapon tied tightly with bandages on his back. Nangongja, who has been following Watergate and trying to reduce his presence, saw Terumi Mei and Chojiro, but he couldn't help but stare at them for a while. After all, before he grew up, Nangongja had already fought with Terumi Mei on the battlefield more than once. Although Chojiro's weapon was tightly tied, Nangongja was still very keen to recognize the origin of the weapon. It was one of the 7 ninja swords of the Mist Village. Chojiro didn't notice Nangongja's gaze because of his lack of strength, but Terumi Mei was a strong ninja level, so she still noticed Nangongja's gaze. She instinctively looked at the person who was peeking at her, but she saw Nangongja, a person who she didn't expect to participate in the 5 Kage tournament with Watergate. Woodleaf Yama? Although she tried her best to control her emotions, Terumi Mei still couldn't help but call out Nangongja's title. Perhaps Nangongja's real name is not so famous in the ninja world, but Nangongja's nickname can be said to be buried in the hearts of almost everyone in the ninja world. Nangongja can be said to be a nightmare in the hearts of Woodleaf's enemies. After hearing Terumi Mei's subconscious exclamation, Ao and Chojiro, who were behind Terumi Mei, immediately rushed between Nangongja and Terumi Mei. Although they didn't directly take out their weapons, they were obviously on guard. After seeing the extreme actions of Ao and Chojiro, Nangongja's mouth also slightly raised a smile. Perhaps Nangongja hoped that he could ease the tension of the 2 ninjas standing opposite him a little through his smile, but Chojiro and Ao became more and more nervous after seeing Nangongja's smile. After all, it is rumored that Woodleaf Yama always has a gentle and cold smile on his face when he kills people. You two don't have to embarrass yourselves here. Seeing the slightly extreme reaction of her subordinates, Terumi Mei finally adjusted her emotions and stopped the 2 men standing in front of her, then slowly walked forward a few steps to Nangongja and said to Nangongja, "It's really been a long time. There has been no news about you over the years. I don't know how many people said that you have lost your life for some reason, but I know that you will not lose your life so easily. After all, you are one of the few men in the world that I, Terumi Mei, approve of." Hearing Terumi Mei's words, Nangongja also slowly nodded his head. In this world, the people who are most likely to sympathize with each other are not friends, but their former enemies. Such a person who racked his brains to study your experience and your thoughts in the middle of the night just to defeat you, isn't he the person who is most likely to sympathize with you in this world? Chapter 5:10. Indeed, I haven't seen you for a long time. But today's protagonist isn't me. After the 5 Kage tournament is over, you and I can catch up. In the past, we were always enemies, and you and I didn't even sit together to drink tea and chat. Obviously, the Kage of his own village was right beside him, but Nangongja still made an agreement to chat with the Kage of another village. If such behavior was really seen by a narrow-minded person, they might think that Nangongja was already disloyal. However, Watergate stood on the side and watched Nangongja and Trumi Mei talking. He didn't feel any anger at all. On the contrary, he felt very gratified that Nangongja met his old friend. Gara and the 2 followers who followed Watergate looked at Watergate with admiration, but Watergate was actually a little unhappy in his heart. After all, although he knew that Nangongja's heart wasn't on the woodleaf, and he couldn't directly order Nangongja as he would his subordinates. However, Minato was nominally the strongest person in his shinobi village, and he used all his means to invite him to support his shinobi village. Now, he was talking happily with the Kages of other shinobi villages, which really made Minato very uncomfortable. But at this moment, Watergate's mind and calmness have been shown incisively and vividly. After all, as a mature person, as a qualified Kage, hiding his emotions well and showing the most appropriate state is the greatest growth that Watergate has gotten after being a Kage for so long. Of course, this atmosphere that made Watergate feel uncomfortable didn't last long, because as the organizer of the 5 Kage tournament, Mifune, the samurai leader of the Land of Iron, along with Inoki, Sandame, Tsuchikage, and Inoki, the 4th Reikage of the Cloud, walked together to the venue of the 5 Kage tournament. Seeing that all the Kages of the 5 great ninja villages had arrived, Watergate, Terumi Mei, and Gara, who were standing together just now, also sat separately in their seats, waiting for the official opening of the 5 Kage tournament. Mifune slowly walked to the open space in the round table that belonged to the 5 Kages. Seeing that all the Kages of the 5 great ninja villages had taken their seats, he began to slowly say, "Today is a day that is worthy of being engraved in the history of the shinobi world, because today is another important 5 Kage tournament hosted by the god of shinobi, Senju Takuma, after the establishment of the 5 great ninja villages. Presumably, the 5 Kages who received the invitation already know the reason for this 5 Kage tournament. Under the distribution of Senju Takuma Sama, the 9-tailed beasts that belonged to different ninja villages, but now, only the 9 tails that belonged to Woodleaf Village is still in the hands of Woodleaf Village. The rest of the 8-tailed beasts have all been captured by an organization that has always existed in the form of mercenaries, Akatsuki. All of this has happened almost in just a few months. Although we don't know the purpose of Akatsuki's capture of the tailed beasts, but the powerful tailed beasts were captured by Akatsuki. It's definitely not out of kindness. This is the topic of this year's 5 Shadows Conference. Everyone, please remain calm and discuss a solution. After briefly explaining the cause and effect, Mifune slightly bowed to the 5 Kages sitting around him, and then left the center of the venue. After all, this meeting is the 5 Kage tournament, and as the leader of the Land of Iron, he is not qualified to participate in it. Seeing Mifune leave, the 5 Kages from the major ninja villages also fell into silence for a while. After all, in this situation, whoever speaks first will easily become the target of public criticism. Being able to become the Kage of a ninja village is not easy to deal with, so at this moment, everyone remained silent. When everyone's attention was focused on the calm before the storm, Nangongja looked at Mifune, who was standing on the side, without saying anything. He didn't know why, but Nangongja always felt that he could feel a slightly familiar aura from Mifune, but it was obviously the first time he saw this samurai leader of the Land of Iron. Nangongja didn't think that his feeling was wrong. As a warrior, shouldn't he trust his intuition the most? But after all, this is just a little doubt in his heart, not enough to be used as evidence. So Nangongja can't make things difficult now, Otherwise, it would be the same as taking the face of the 5 great ninja villages directly from the face of these Kages, and then putting them on the ground and stepping on them. Although Nangongja is not afraid of the anger of these Kages, but after all, the less trouble, the better. When he can fully confirm the inexplicable feeling in his heart, Nangongja will absolutely not hesitate. As the convener of this 5 Kage tournament, let me speak first. Otherwise, won't we have to keep silent like this? I don't know when we can officially start the meeting. The 4th Reikage AI has a fiery temper. Compared to the other Kages, he didn't like this atmosphere, so he took the lead and said, "The Nibi and the Hachibi, Column Force, Yujito Nibi, and Killer Bee have been forcibly taken away by the Akatsuki. Yujito Nibi is an outstanding ninja of our ninja village, and Killer Bee is my sworn brother. These 2 people were directly taken away by the Akatsuki. It made me very angry. After some investigation, I found that the Akatsuki not only took away the ninjas of our Kumo Shinobu village, but also the 5th Reikage and more bijou. This made me realize the seriousness of the problem, so I gathered several Kages of various ninja villages here to discuss how to deal with the threat of the Akatsuki. The 4th Reikage AI has a fiery temper, but this time his speech was reasonable, and even in such a process, he didn't show too much of his anger. This is not because he suddenly changed his temperament, on the contrary, because he attached enough importance to this matter, so he restrained his temper and said to the other Kages. After the 4th Reikage AI finished these words, everyone also couldn't help but look at the 4th Reikage Bo Kaze Watergate, who was sitting calmly in his seat. After all, Bo Kaze Watergate defeated the 6 Paths of Pain and successfully guarded the wood leaf. With such a record, it's impossible to not gain anything, right? Chapter 511. After discovering that the eyes of the 4 Kage were looking at him, Watergate knew that he couldn't continue to remain silent, so Watergate slightly cleared his throat and stood up from his seat. Watergate, who obviously stood up under the gaze of the 4 Kage, looked very calm at the moment, as if he had already expected such a development. After tidying up his collar, Minato finally opened his mouth and said, "Don't worry. We Wood Leaf do have a deep understanding of the Akatsuki organization. It is precisely because of this understanding that our Wood Leaf Ninja Village is more clear about what kind of dangerous organization Akatsuki is. In our information, we have roughly figured out the composition of the Akatsuki organization. Although the Akatsuki organization has a large number of ordinary members, but standing at the top of it, there are 10 who have their own title and can wear the Akatsuki's signature black robe with red clouds." After saying that, Watergate suddenly stopped his mouth, looked around the other 4 Kage sitting on the seat with his eyes, then continued. "In fact, the 10 members standing at the top of the Akatsuki organization actually have a certain relationship with 4 of our 5 great ninja villages. Akatsuki Organization's South, Kisankisame comes from the Mist Village of the Land of Water, Jade, Sasori comes from the Sand Village of the Land of Wind, Blue, Thara comes from the Wagakure of the Land of Earth, and Du, Itachi Achiha and Kong, Ochimaru come from our Wood Leaf Village. In addition to the above few ninjas who have a relationship with the 4 great ninja villages, there are also Zero, Pain and White Konan who belong to the Rain Village of the Land of Rain, Kitakazu Kazu who belongs to the Waterfall Village of the Land of Waterfall, and Mitsu, a Haiden who belongs to the Yukagura of the Land of Spring. There is also Hoodlum who inherited the title of Jade from the Scorpion of the Crimson Sand, and Zetsu who has the title of Black." After roughly explaining the composition of the members of Akatsuki organization to the 4 Kages, Watergate didn't have time to say anything when a rather sarcastic voice barged into everyone's ears. "Wood Leaf Village is really worthy of being one of the top 5 ninja villages. I didn't expect such a powerful and dangerous Akatsuki organization to have a ninja belonging to Wood Leaf Village. This really makes this old man admire them to the extreme." Looking at the source of the voice, it was Sandame Anoki, who was sitting on the seat of the Tsuchikage. Anoki is a very stubborn, old-fashioned, and extreme old man. If it wasn't for Anoki's powerful Kekkei Genkai, dust release, it is estimated that he would have died several times because of his temper. Anoki's expression at the moment looked quite angry. It may be because he heard the name of Deidara from Watergate's mouth, so his mood became unstable. But after hearing Inoki's provocative words, Watergate didn't feel angry because of this, but went on to say, "In Akatsuki organization, we can now confirm the death of Sasori, Deidara, Kazu, Haydn, and Pain. Among these people, except for Deidara who didn't die in the hands of our Woodleaf Ninja, the rest were all killed by our Woodleaf Ninja. And among them, Itachi Uchiha is actually a spy planted by our Woodleaf in Akatsuki organization in the early years. Although he lost his life for various reasons, we will never let down such a loyal person. Before coming here, we have decided to engrave the life of Itachi Uchiha, who has sacrificed his life for Woodleaf, on the Woodleaf Memorial Tablet. We can't let such a hero who is willing to give up everything just to find out the situation of Akatsuki organization bear the name of traitorous ninja and welcome eternal sleep." Hearing Watergate's words, Nara Shikamaru, who has been standing behind Watergate without saying a word, was also surprised. Because his father is Minato's trusted aide, Shikamaru can actually know more about the decisions of Konoha's higher-ups than other people. Since the establishment of Woodleaf Village, no ninja with the name of traitorous ninja has been ordinary. And now although Watergate said that he has obtained the unanimous approval of Woodleaf, but Shikamaru is very clear that Watergate is actually fabricating such information. The reason why Itachi Uchiha became a traitorous ninja is because he slaughtered his own family, and now Watergate is willing to rehabilitate Itachi Uchiha. Isn't it a disguised admission that Woodleaf also played a role in the extermination of Uchiha clan and added fuel to the fire and even played a role in the dark? This kind of behavior is really somewhat unwise. But since the decision has already been made, and it was even made in front of the other 4 Hokage of Konoha and the samurai leader of the Land of Iron, no matter what, Konoha can only follow Minato's words. Although Watergate's words are a bit reckless, but it almost completely dispels any suspicious speculation between Woodleaf and Akatsuki. After all, the current situation is a bit unfavorable for Woodleaf, for of the 5 major ninja villages have lost their own people column force. Why didn't Woodleaf lose their own people? The 4 ninja villages have more or less suffered a big loss in the hands of Akatsuki. Why only Woodleaf Village can defeat the invading enemy, and even directly kill the leader of Akatsuki? Although all of this can be explained by the strength of Woodleaf, but such an explanation is really difficult for the other 4 Kage to believe. Everyone is a big ninja village in the ninja world. No one is worse than the other. Even if they are worse, they absolutely can't admit it. This is political correctness. After seeing that Inoki made things difficult for Watergate and was directly slapped in the face by Watergate, Yandame Reikage, who was the convener of the meeting, also spoke. "Sandame Tsuchikage, don't ridicule others like this. I have received information that Iwagakure once hired Akatsuki. I don't know if you can explain to us what kind of deal you made with Akatsuki?" Reikage was the convener of the meeting, and he also hoped that this meeting can get some results, and not become a complaint and wrangling between the 5 major ninja villages. So after seeing Sandame Tsuchikage and Inoki's behavior, he can only say such words to shut Inoki's mouth. Chapter 512. After hearing Yandame Reikage AI's words, Inoki, who originally wanted to say something, was directly choked by such a reprimanding question. But for such words, Inoki can't completely ignore it, but he must say something to express his attitude, just like Watergate, who would rather smear Woodleaf's reputation and completely disassociate himself from the Akatsuki. Everyone knows that although the Akatsuki was secretive before it was exposed, it can be regarded as a mercenary organization with good credibility. Not to mention our Iwagakure, who dares to say that we have nothing to do with a mercenary organization like the Akatsuki? It's just a matter of one giving money and the other completing the mission. Such a transaction is not worth discussing. Although Inoki's words still had some hidden hostility, the other Kage sitting in their respective seats were speechless. There are many things that can't be done by the ninjas of their own village, so a mercenary organization like the Akatsuki that only recognizes money regardless of the mission content has become the best choice for everyone. This in itself is a tacit thing between everyone, and now that it was suddenly said out loud, it made everyone a little embarrassed. Looking at Inoki's style, Mifune, who was standing on the side and watching the reaction of all the Kage, also flashed a trace of light in his eyes. Anoki is really a person who acts quite similar to him. Just when the meeting fell into an awkward silence for a while, a space vortex slowly appeared in the center of the venue, and a somewhat frivolous voice drilled into everyone's ears. Oh my, this is really an eye-opener. He thought that the 5 Kages conference would be a serious meeting, but he didn't expect that the 5 people sitting here, who represented the pinnacle of the ninja world, were like aunties quietly arguing in the morning market. If they weren't exposing each other's shortcomings, then they were talking nonsense and shirking responsibility. It was really surprising. A group of people like you, how can you stop our Akatsuki's plan? Such a frivolous voice may be a bit unfamiliar to others, but for Nangongzhi and Watergate, it was particularly familiar. Because not long ago, Nangongzhi had fought with the owner of this voice, and Namikaze Minato had a very unforgettable hatred with the owner of this voice. The owner of this voice was precisely the masked man Hoodlum, the mysterious member of the Akatsuki organization that was mentioned in the Watergate. Nangongzhi took down the Heaven's Disaster Sword from his back and held it in his hand. Obviously he was ready to fight. But Watergate suddenly stopped Nangongzhi, who was standing behind him. Before the battle between Nangongzhi and Hoodlum, Watergate had already obtained some information. Naturally he knew that Nangongzhi seemed to have some means to prevent Hoodlum from using space ninjutsu, but as a ninja who was also proficient in space ninjutsu, Watergate at this moment felt that Hoodlum standing in the center of the venue at this moment didn't seem to be using his body. Instead there was a kind of illusory feeling. Since Hoodlum dared to appear here, naturally he was well prepared, so it was better to give Hoodlum a chance to perform. Maybe he could get some interesting information from his mouth. But not everyone was like Watergate, who was able to control their emotions. For example, A stood up with Chakra's aura surging all over his body. The powerful lightning release chakra instantly turned into a blue and white lightning that wrapped around his body. This state was A's unique posture when fighting. Lightning release chakra mode. Lightning release taijutsu. Under the stimulation of lightning release chakra, A's physical fitness was greatly improved. Almost instantly he was standing in the center of the venue by Hoodlum's side. He fiercely hit Hoodlum's figure with his elbow. The huge force even caused the air to explode, creating a loud roar. Despite being the target of such a powerful attack, Hoodlum looked unperturbed, as if he didn't care about his own safety at all. Seeing Hoodlum's contemptuous attitude, A was instantly filled with anger. After all, as a Kage, how could his attack be ignored? This kind of thing was simply unforgivable, but at the same time, AI restrained his strength a little. Although the original all-out attack still looked aggressive, in fact, it had already been reduced to about 80% of its original strength. After all, although Hoodlum's fearlessness made A angry, it also made A vigilant. Sure enough, A, who was wrapped in lightning, directly hit Hoodlum's body, but it didn't seem to have any effect. Hoodlum, who was standing in the center of the venue, was like a transparent illusion. Raikage's attack directly passed through Hoodlum's body. When Raikage discovered that his attack actually passed through Hoodlum's body, he calmed down and withdrew his majestic chakra. Raikage's expression was grave as he looked at Hoodlum and asked, "Although I don't really understand how you avoided my attack, but I know that the current you is definitely not your original body. Since you are willing to take such a big risk to come to the 5 Kages tournament's venue, it can't be just to ridicule us. Then please tell us, what is your purpose?" Seeing that Raikage had calmed down, Hoodlum's eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment. It seems that Raikage wasn't as impulsive and easily angered as the information said. "That's right, I naturally didn't come here empty-handed. I have prepared a big gift for all of you. I actually understand the purpose of all of you gathering here. Isn't it to discuss a countermeasure to deal with our Akatsuki organization? But looking at all of you acting like headless flies, randomly suspecting each other and attacking each other, I really can't stand it anymore." With that said, Hoodlum's voice even carried a hint of disappointment. It was as if he regarded the Kage of the various shinobi villages present as a group of children who don't know the immensity of the sky and the depth of the earth. "I came here to tell you how powerful the Akatsuki organization's grand plan is. and how beneficial it is to the ninja world. Chapter 5:13. In ancient times, human beings were still in an uncivilized state, and every day, endless battles broke out in the world. At the same time, it also meant that countless living beings had lost their lives. Until a man appeared, and with his godlike eyes, he brought peace and ninjutsu to the shinobi world. This man is called the first ancestor of the shinobi world, the Six-Path Sannin. Obviously, Hoodlum said that he was going to talk about his grand plan, but he suddenly began to talk about the myths that have been circulating in the shinobi world for a long time. Six-Path Sannin, no one knows whether such a person is a real person or not, but in the shinobi world, from 80 old men to 3-year-old children, they all have some understanding of such a person. But it is such a person who is usually regarded as an illusory mythical figure. At this moment, Hoodlum said it in an unusually serious tone. It feels like such a legend that only exists in oral legends and ambiguous written records, but suddenly, a living Six-Path Sannin appeared. People don't know where the Six-Path Sannin got such a powerful power, and how he was able to create such wonderful existences like chakra and ninjutsu. But everyone is very clear about one thing, and that is, the power of the Six-Path Sannin is beyond the dimension, and it is irrefutable. Hoodlum's only eye that was exposed outside the mask bloomed with a blazing light, and even the 3 tomo in the 3 tomo Sharingan rotated quickly. After hearing Hoodlum's words, whether it was Nangong Zhu or anyone else present, their hearts throbbed. Vaguely, Nangong Zhu felt that what Hoodlum said at this moment may be related to the deepest secrets of the shinobi world. However, the power of the Six-Path Sannin is not innate. The source of almost endless power for the Six-Path Sannin is the strongest creature called Jubi. And hearing this name, I think you already know that this so-called Jubi has an extremely close relationship with the 9-tailed beasts in the Kage's shinobi village. The so-called 9 great-tailed beasts are actually formed after the power of the 10 tails was dispersed. Just the scattered power can become the trump card in the hands of the major ninja villages. Then how powerful is the real Jubi? The purpose of our Akatsuki organization collecting tailed beasts is to let Jubi reappear in the world. After hearing Hoodlum's words, the 4th Reikage AI said to Hoodlum, "So your goal is to summon the 10 tails and become its human column force? Then rely on the power of the Jubi to become the most powerful existence in this world, and then use his own power to suppress the shinobi world? In the ninja world, the power of a bijou cannot be directly used. If you want to use the power of a bijou, you have to seal the bijou in the body of a ninja, and then use the power of the bijou through the seal. Even AI's younger brother, Killer Bee, can cooperate almost perfectly with the Hachibi in his body, but the seal imposed on Killer Bee still exists. The seal is not only a restriction on the bijou, but also a means of protection for column force. No. After hearing the words of the 4th Reikage AI, Hoodlum slowly shook his head, and then said to AI, "You really are a group of people who lack imagination. Can bijou really only make an individual stronger? How can one person bring eternal peace to the ninja world by fighting alone? What I want is to seal the Jubi in my body, and then use the power of the Jubi to further stimulate the power of my Sharingan. With the help of the Jubi's power, I will project the most powerful genjutsu contained in the Sharingan, Tsukuyami, on the moon, and the moon in the sky will forever hang in the sky because of the power of the Jubi, and the place where the moonlight can be spread will be the range of the Tsukuyami. This is my plan, the Eye of the Moon plan. Everyone will be immersed in the Tsukuyami, and there will never be any pain in that world. There will only be eternal stability and peace. Isn't such a utopian world good?" Hoodlum's tone was full of yearning and deep sadness, but for the leader of a shinobi village like Watergate, personal sadness can simply be ignored. After all, the so-called Eye of the Moon plan that Hoodlum just mentioned will drag everyone in the shinobi world into the infinite Tsukuyami, making everyone live in a false world. Such a thing is really difficult to accept. Coward! Just when everyone was thinking about how to deal with the Eye of the Moon plan mentioned by Hoodlum, a slightly murderous voice suddenly broke into everyone's ears. Everyone looked at the place where the voice came from, and the person who spoke was Xianxia, who has been standing behind Watergate since the opening of the 5 Kage tournament and almost didn't say a word. At this moment, Xianxia was holding his Dark Heaven's Retribution sword in his hand, his shoulder-length hair was fluttering without wind, and his sharp eyebrows were flowing with a different kind of sharp aura. We live in this world, and everyone is destined to experience all kinds of sad things. Even the Kage of the 5 great shinobi villages here have experienced all kinds of heartbreaking things. But has anyone ever chosen to escape into the virtual world to be free from sadness? Infinite Tsukuyami? Eye of the Moon plan? I thought that the Akatsuki had some kind of conspiracy, even if it was just like what Yandame Reikage said, creating a Jubi column force to fight against the entire shinobi world. I don't feel uncomfortable. But what you have been plotting is just to build a virtual world, deceiving yourself and deceiving others. It's ridiculous. There is no way to face his sadness, there is no way to overcome his sadness. Even if he really has the same level of power as the 6-path Sannin, he is still a weakling. A coward who sees himself as a weakling. If the enemy we are facing is just like this, then this 5 Kage conference is not going to happen. I, Xianxia, am enough to kill such a coward. At this moment, Xianxia was completely different from the gentle appearance he had at home. If you have to describe it, then Xianxia at home was a sword sheathed, and now Xianxia was a sword that didn't hide its sharpness at all. Seeing Xianxia like this, Terumi Mei's eyes flashed with a trace of nostalgia. The Xianxia who fought with her in the past was not a gentle gentleman, but a brave man who knew how to face difficulties. Chapter 5:14. Xianxia blurted out his thoughts, and at the same time, it also broke the thoughts of the Kage of the 5 great villages. Everyone who can rely on their own strength to become a Kage-level powerhouse, although not necessarily the most talented person, but certainly the most determined person. So Xianxia's words actually touched the bottom of everyone's heart. If a person's heart is not strong enough, he can't control the power beyond his limit. Too much power won't make people stronger, on the contrary, it will bring a person the fate of death. Well said, worthy of the Woodleaf Yama Xianxia. When I saw you standing behind Yandame Hokage without saying a word, I thought that you had been in seclusion for a long time, but now I see that you are still so sharp, it really makes me feel gratified. Among the 5 Kages, the most irritable but also the most honest Reikage AI laughed after hearing Xianxia's words. If it wasn't because it wasn't the right time, AI might have already walked to Xianxia's side and put his arm around Xianxia's shoulder and let Xianxia accompany him to drink or fight. I am me, I will not change because of the passage of time. The sword in my hand exists for battle, and my martial skills are honed for battle. I have never been afraid of battle. Xianxia carried his Heaven's Disaster Sword and slowly walked towards the center of the 5 Kages convention, where Hoodlum was standing. Xianxia stared emotionlessly at Hoodlum, who was emitting a faint aura of nothingness, before continuing. I know you came here, not only to show off the Akatsuki's plan, but more importantly, to test the attitude of the 5 great Kages towards the Akatsuki. At the same time, it is also a kind of pressure on the 5 great ninja villages. After all, you have already collected 8 of the 9-tailed beasts. But I believe that whether it is me or the other Kages, we will absolutely not yield in the face of such pressure, because we are different from you, we are prepared to face everything. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Seeing Xianxia directly issued a request for a battle, even if he was in a half-real and half-fake state, Hoodlum's heart was filled with an inexplicable sense of crisis. After all, Xianxia had relied on his sword chi and sword array to seal off his spatial transference ability. Even if Xianxia had used some other method to break his state between reality and illusion, Hoodlum felt that it was possible. Under the mask, Hoodlum's eyebrows slightly frowned together and directly disappeared from the center of the round table. He was standing in the middle of the room, a slightly remote decorative high platform. Fight? That's what I want, then I am here, on behalf of the Rain Village, on behalf of the Rain Village, on behalf of the Akatsuki, on behalf of the 5 great ninja villages, and on behalf of the other small countries, I declare war. After more than 10 years of war, a new round of Shinobi World War is about to be born. Let's fight, let's dance, let's show our respective styles in the sandstorm of war. Whether my ambition can be realized, or your insignificant existence can be maintained, let's find out the answer in the war. Hoodlum looked at the 5 Kage standing in the field, as well as the other 10 followers of the 5 great shinobi villages and samurai of the Land of Iron, and issued his war declaration. When they heard Hoodlum's words, Sandame and Inoki's eyebrows slightly frowned together. Inoki's eyes stared at Hoodlum's 3 Tomo Sharingan, and suddenly an impossible idea appeared in his mind. Hoodlum's real identity. No, it can't be that person. Under Inoki's slightly frightened gaze, Hoodlum continued to speak. This war declaration is issued by me, Uchiha Madara. Effective immediately. Then let's give the next stage to another person. Hearing Hoodlum's words, the Kages of the 5 great ninja villages had different reactions. The Hokage Namikaze Minato had some doubts and puzzlement. The Kazekage guard didn't seem to understand why a person who was rumored to have been killed by Hashirama would appear here. The Reikage AI's eyes were filled with fighting desire, and the Mizukage Mei's eyes were blooming with a trace of interest. However, although their expressions were different, there was a little doubt in their eyes. Unlike all the Kages before, Inoki's eyes were full of horror. When he was still a young and weak ninja, he once went to Konoha with his teacher, the second Kage, Tsuchikage, for diplomacy. At that time, he met the legendary Azura Uchiha Madara, who was as famous as Senju Hashirama. The peace talks between Iwagakure and Woodleaf Village were directly rejected by Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara even directly attacked him and his teacher. The battle wasn't fierce at all. It was almost a one-sided crush. Both of them were seriously injured. At that time, Inoki wanted to climb up and continue to fight with Uchiha Madara in exchange for his teacher's death. But at that time, Uchiha Madara seemed to be tired of playing with him. He looked at Inoki, who was struggling, and slowly said, "Do you also want to dance in front of me?" Such a short sentence, even without any murderous intent or other momentum, directly broke through Inoki's psychological defense. Inoki only remembered that he directly collapsed on the ground, and he couldn't even move a finger. And Hoodlum's words, which sounded a bit ordinary, made Inoki directly think of the shadow that once covered his head for a long time. After Hoodlum finished his declaration of war, his figure directly twisted and disappeared. Instead, a figure wearing a white-lined coat and a black robe with red clouds on it, holding a silver long sword, and a 6-pointed star pattern in his eyes stood where Hoodlum was standing. This person was the only orphan of the Uchiha family who left Nangongja and then joined Akatsuki, and arrested the Hachibi column force for Akatsuki, Uchiha Sasuke. Chapter 515. Although Uchiha Sasuke suddenly appeared at the scene of the 5 Kage summit, Mizukage, Kazekage, and Tsuchikage chose to ignore him at the same time. After all, the declaration of war issued by Uchiha Madara made everyone's mind unsettled. Moreover, Uchiha Sasuke was the traitor of Woodleaf Village. Now, as the 4th Hokage, Kaze Watergate, was standing here. It was really not their turn to make a move, right? But just when Watergate didn't say anything, AI, the 4th Reikage, couldn't sit still. The Raitun Chakra mode was launched again, and a layer of lightning formed by chakra instantly covered Reikage's body. Under the stimulation of lightning attribute chakra, Reikage AI's physical fitness was greatly improved. Like a running thunder, AI almost instantly came to Sasuke's side. "You bastard! Where did you take my brother?" AI questioned Sasuke loudly, and at the same time, his hands were constantly launching various attacks. Sasuke quickly pulled out the silver long sword in his hand. Although he didn't have any sword moves that looked gorgeous, there was a sense of returning to the basics between each move. Every sword attack was just right on the power node of AI's punches and kicks, so although AI's attack was very powerful, he couldn't exert the power he should have every time, which made AI very uncomfortable. "Your brother?" Sasuke also observed Reikage's physical characteristics in the process of fighting with him. He also judged the fact that Reikage came from Cloud Village, so he went on to say, Is that the Hachibi column force who has been singing weird rap? Your brother wasn't caught by us. We just caught a clone of him made with Hachibi's tail. I don't know where he is now. Sasuke's purpose in coming to the 5 Kage summit was very clear. He didn't want to fight with the Kage of the major ninja villages present, but he wanted to find an enemy who had a blood feud with his family. Therefore, Sasuke hoped that he could not participate in any unnecessary battle as much as possible. After hearing Sasuke's words, although Raikage still didn't stop his attack, whether it was the rest of the ninjas around or Sasuke, who was the target of the attack, they clearly felt that the frequency and strength of Raikage's attack had decreased. Sasuke knew that although Raikage was skeptical of his words, Raikage knew his brother well enough. With his brother's character, he could do such a thing. After understanding this, Sasuke immediately used his chakra to simulate sword aura to cover the long sword in his hand. The slash was aggressive, but it didn't have much murderous intent. Raikage knew that this was actually a signal that Sasuke wanted to end the battle between the two of them. At this moment, Raikage finally realized that it was indeed very inappropriate for an outsider Kage to attack Wood Leaf's 4th Hokage. So, seeing Sasuke taking the initiative to give him a way out, Raikage also directly retreated to avoid Sasuke's attack, and the thunder surging on his body slowly disappeared. Seeing the end of the battle between Sasuke and Raikage, Watergate, who had been standing on the side, also said, "Uchiha Sasuke, tell me your purpose here." Watergate's words were cold, as if as long as Sasuke said any answer he didn't want to hear, Watergate might go berserk. But Sasuke didn't mind Watergate's cold tone. He just pointed the long sword in his hand in one direction and said to Watergate, "I came here for only one purpose, and that is him. An enemy who has a blood feud with me." Looking at the direction of Sasuke's sword tip, everyone was surprised to find that the so-called blood feud enemy in Sasuke's mouth turned out to be samurai leader Mifune, the host of this 5 Kages tournament. And after being pointed at by Sasuke's sword tip, Mifune didn't show any panic or confusion. Instead, he was very calm, too calm. I didn't expect that Akatsuki would still be able to determine my identity even though I've hidden my whereabouts to this extent. Mifune said slowly, but the voice coming out of Mifune's mouth was completely different from before, and at the same time, a cloud of smoke also rose from Mifune's body. When the smoke dissipated, an old man with one of his eyes wrapped around his body stood on the ground instead of Mifune. This person was Sasuke's enemy, Nangong's enemy, and even Watergate's enemy, the leader of Woodleaf Original Root, Woodleaf's rebellious ninja, Shimura Danzo. I didn't think that I would be so careful, but I would still be disrupted by a brat like you, who I don't even put in my eyes. Do you know how strong I want to kill you now? Danzo's last sentence was almost a roar from Danzo's throat, and at the same time, Danzo expressed his strong killing intent. A lot of smoke rose from the bodies of the Land of Iron samurai who were responsible for the security work in the 5 Kages tournament venue, and one by one, they instantly turned into root ninjas. Although Danzo didn't say anything, every root ninja seemed to have received the mission of this battle before, and one by one, they rushed towards the Kage and their followers of the 5 great shinobi villages without fear of death. The ninjas of Root have undergone extremely terrifying brainwashing. As long as it's Danzo's order, they will sacrifice their lives without hesitation. When the Kage and their followers of the 5 great shinobi villages saw that they actually suffered an unexpected disaster, they naturally didn't maintain a calm mood and directly fought these Root ninjas who dared to provoke them. At this moment, Sasuke wasn't stopped by the Root ninjas, but Danzo, intentionally or unintentionally, quickly approached Danzo's side. Danzo held his cane, while Sasuke held his silver sword, and the weapons in their hands instantly intertwined. One's eyes were full of anger, while the other's eyes were full of hatred. Two equally negative and equally strong emotions seemed to be gushing out of their eyes at the next moment. Chapter 5:16. When a person's heart is completely filled with negative emotions such as anger or hatred, there is no way to make rational judgments. At this moment, Sasuke and Danzo were indulging in their own hatred and anger. The two ninjas who mainly fought with ninjutsu didn't use any powerful ninjutsu at this moment. Instead, one held a crutch and the other held a long sword and began to attack each other. With the sound of the crutch and the long sword intertwining, the negative emotions in Sasuke and Danzo's heart not only didn't fade but became more and more majestic. It's you! It's you! It's you! It's your plan, it's your ambition that made my family a sacrifice. My beautiful, pure, simple life has been shattered because of you. If it wasn't for you, the Uchiha clan wouldn't have perished. If it wasn't for you, my brother wouldn't have joined the Akatsuki and even risked his life to pass the information of the Akatsuki to you. Damn you! Damn you! Damn you! Gradually, Sasuke's swordsmanship began to change, and Danzo, who was standing opposite Sasuke, was even worse than Sasuke. After all, Sasuke was still much younger than Danzo, and Danzo's physical fitness was absolutely no match for Sasuke. At this moment, Danzo also felt like a broken jar. Although he knew that he was at a disadvantage at this moment, Danzo felt like fighting to the death. Go to hell! Go to hell! Go to hell! After I was expelled from the Woodleaf village by Namikaze, Watergate, and Nangongja, those two bastards, I was like a rat crossing the street in the ninja world. I used to be the most powerful person in Konoha, but all of a sudden, I became a traitor of Konoha, a traitor of Konoha, a traitor of Konoha, a traitor of the shinobi world, who can barely survive in the dark corners of the shinobi world, despised like a cockroach. It's not easy, it's not easy. I learned about the opportunity of the 5 Kages tournament, and almost mobilized all the remaining forces in my hands. Covering my whereabouts, planning. Just a little bit more, and I could implement my plan, but whether it was you or that Uchiha Madara, they all came out one by one. Why, this is the only way I can think of to clear my name, but it was still destroyed by you. That's right, this time, Danzo spent almost all the resources he had, and even killed the samurai leader of the Land of Iron, so that he could come to the 5 Kages tournament and do something big, and erase the Woodleaf trader's name, which is extremely humiliating for Danzo. It's ridiculous to say that for Shimura Danzo, who is the same generation as Sandaime and the disciple of the legendary second Hokage of Woodleaf, the most important thing is his reputation. Danzo can accept hiding in the dark to erase some troubles for the Woodleaf, and Danzo can also accept his fierce name being feared by countless people, but what Danzo can't accept the most is the disdain and incomprehension from the Woodleaf people. Everyone who is determined to throw himself into the dark is destined to find a refuge for his heart. Itachi Uchiha's refuge is his brother Uchiha, Sasuke, and Nagato's refuge is the almost naive vow to bring peace to the shinobi world when the Akatsuki was first established. For Danzo, the Woodleaf that he has been fighting for since he was a child is his refuge. The more desperate a person is, the easier it is for them to rely on their original refuge. Although Danzo was driven out of the Woodleaf by the cooperation of Watergate and Nangongja, the strange thing is that Danzo has never been angry with the Woodleaf itself. Even now, it is obvious that Danzo arranged the root ninjas to rush towards Watergate, Nangongja, and Shikamaru Nara. It is obvious that he took their strength into consideration, and even vaguely felt that he was protecting them. The Woodleaf can lose himself, but it must not lose powerful ninjas like Watergate and Nangongja, and it must not lose a new force with unlimited potential like Shikamaru Nara. Does Danzo hate Watergate and Nangongja? Of course, he hates them. But this hatred for Nangongja and Watergate is completely covered by Danzo's love for the Woodleaf. At this moment, Danzo is thinking about how to make the last stage of his life play a greater role for the Woodleaf. At the beginning, Danzo's plan was to disguise himself as Mifune to participate in the 5 Kage tournament, and during the tournament, he will try to keep a low profile and observe the Kage of each ninja village. By observing the performance of these Kage in the 5 Kage tournament and various kinds of information he usually collected, he will select a Kage who is hostile to the Woodleaf and full of potential. Using the Uchiha clan's body flicker Shursui, Uchiha Shursui's Manjikyu Sharingan, he will subconsciously modify this Kage, making this Kage firmly stand in the camp of the Woodleaf. After completing this matter, Danzo decided to return to the Woodleaf village with all his important information, ninjutsu scrolls, and the remaining power in his hands, and directly surrender to the fourth Hokage, Minato Watergate. He gave his Manjikyu Sharingan, which was in cooldown, to Minato Watergate, and wanted to explain the various arrangements he made. Even if there is no way to let everyone know what he has done, at least such an important event will be recorded in the secret scroll passed down in the hands of each generation of Hokage. Although he is not the Hokage, every Hokage in the future will see his deeds. Such an ending for Danzo is an acceptable end. But Sasuke suddenly appeared in front of him. He didn't know why, but Danzo's heart began to have a vague premonition. The Uchiha clan boy standing in front of him may become stronger than anyone in the future. Danzo's original plan has been slowly adjusted by Danzo himself. Using the precious Kodo Amatsukami on Sasuke, isn't it a good choice to make Sasuke a loyal dog of the woodleaf? Chapter 517. When such an idea appeared in Danzo's mind, the benefits of doing so emerged one by one in Danzo's mind. Within Danzo's knowledge, the most threatening person to Woodleaf Village was actually Hoodlum, who had just appeared with Sharingan. Danzo himself had 11 Sharingan as his trump card. In order to quietly eliminate Sandboy Danzo, he used one of his Sharingan to use Izanagi. But even so, Danzo still has 10 Sharingan at this moment. Even his right eye has a Manjikyu Sharingan that can perform a super ninjutsu like Kodo Amatsukami. At this moment, Sasuke also has a Manjikyu Sharingan, so can Sasuke be a means to deal with Hoodlum? Danzo was very clear that only Manjikyu Sharingan can fight against Manjikyu Sharingan. When Danzo thought about the gains and losses, he was no longer controlled by the anger in his heart. Only his exposed left eye flashed with a trace of decisiveness and wisdom at this moment. Danzo has decided to use Kodo Amatsukami on Sasuke. Futon, True Void Wave. When Danzo regained his calm, his fighting style also changed back to what he was best at. Danzo's hand quickly formed a seal, and a wind release ninjutsu quickly formed. A sharp wind blade attacked in the direction of Sasuke. Danzo's sudden change in attack style made Sasuke somewhat uncomfortable. But after all, Sasuke can be considered as a battle-hardened veteran. After discovering the change in Danzo's mentality, Sasuke knew that he can't just indulge in the negative emotions in his heart. What he needs now is not to release the negative emotions in his heart, but to avenge his brother and his clansmen. Sasuke controlled his body and tried his best to avoid Danzo's wind release ninjutsu, but Vacuum Wave was a B-class ninjutsu. Its movement speed and attack power were extremely fast and powerful. And Sasuke was the one being attacked. There was a time difference in the middle, so although Sasuke tried his best to avoid Danzo's attack, there was no way for him to be completely unharmed. Vacuum Wave brushed past Sasuke's body, scratching a scar on Sasuke's cheek and taking away a strand of Sasuke's hair. But all of this was not what Danzo expected. Because Danzo knew that if he fought Sasuke in close combat, he wouldn't have an advantage. The reason why he used Vacuum Wave was to force Sasuke to retreat and then have a long-range ninjutsu fight with him. But now, Sasuke was so fearless that he directly faced his ninjutsu. It was really unexpected. Sasuke's unexpected action also made Danzo pay more attention to his decision to turn Sasuke into Woodleaf's loyal hound. Although Sasuke's current strength hasn't reached the peak of the ninja world, it's already very impressive. With a little training and stimulation, Danzo believes that Sasuke will make great progress. You must become Woodleaf's loyal hound, Uchiha Sasuke. At this moment, Sasuke naturally didn't know what Danzo was planning. After all, Danzo never told anyone about his plan, and now Danzo changed his target in an instant. But Sasuke knew that this was the best time for him to deal with Danzo. Once he couldn't capture Danzo here, it would be difficult for him to catch the cunning Danzo later. Raiton chakra surged out of Sasuke's body and blessed the silver long sword in Sasuke's hand. The sword light mixed with the thunder produced by Raiton chakra made the silver long sword in Sasuke's hand burst out a dazzling light for a while. It looked like it directly turned into a long sword made of light. Such a long sword is not as simple as it looks. Whether it's the lightning chakra or the sword light, they are not simple things. Each of them has an extremely powerful power. Moreover, Sasuke still had his own trump card that he hadn't used yet. I must force Sasuke to retreat. Seeing the silver long sword in Sasuke's hand, Danzo knew that he absolutely couldn't fall into a close combat with Sasuke that was obviously disadvantageous to him, and too fierce close combat wasn't suitable for him to use Kodo Amatsukami to achieve his ultimate goal. Futon, Vacuum Renbois. After seeing Sasuke getting closer and closer to himself, Danzo also quickly printed in his hand, hoping to distance himself from Sasuke through ninjutsu. In such a short distance, facing Danzo's double advantage in number and power, Sasuke knew that he had to dodge, otherwise, he would definitely fall into a disadvantage. Or, can I show a part of my strength appropriately? At this moment, I can't retreat. Once I retreat, I will fall into Danzo's rhythm. In fact, the strength gap between me and Danzo is not so big. So if I want to win the battle and even cut Danzo under my sword, I must grasp the rhythm of the battle. I'd rather increase the consumption than retreat. Susanoo. Sasuke's heart silently recited the name of the ability he was about to use. The hexagonal pattern in Sasuke's eyes rotated quickly. Because of the large use of dojutsu, Sasuke's eyes even oozed blood. At the same time, the faint blue-purple chakra flame wrapped around Sasuke's body like a skeleton. Although Vacuum Renbois is very powerful, it is still a lot worse than Susanoo. After Sasuke saw that Vacuum Renbois was completely blocked by his Susanoo, Sasuke immediately undid his Susanoo. After all, using Susanoo was also very stressful for Sasuke. Holding his long sword wrapped in thunder and sword energy, Sasuke directly attacked Danzo with reverse Kasaya slash from bottom to top. The target of the attack was Danzo's right arm that had been hidden in his clothes and transplanted with Sharingan. Chapter 518. Danzo has been telling everyone that his right arm and right eye have become disabled due to injuries. Sasuke also received such information. So Sasuke didn't know that Danzo had 10 Sharingan transplanted on his right arm, but Sasuke keenly felt the same aura from Danzo's right arm as his own Sharingan. This kind of aura was quite illusory, but Sasuke was extremely convinced by such a feeling. It was precisely because of this feeling in his heart that Sasuke subconsciously shifted his silver sword, which was originally going to cut Danzo's neck, slightly to cut Danzo's right arm. Originally, with his many years of combat experience, although Sasuke's attack was unexpected and very fast, Danzo still saw that Sasuke's sword was aimed at his neck, so Danzo was also ready to dodge. But the long sword was about to hit his neck, and Danzo was also ready to deal with such an attack. Sasuke's silver sword wrapped in lightning and sword aura suddenly turned and attacked Danzo's right arm when it was about to hit Danzo. Do I have to expose Izanagi so early? When he saw Sasuke's long sword attacking his right arm, Danzo knew that he couldn't rely on his physical fitness and ordinary ninjutsu to avoid such an attack. Danzo was not an indecisive person. When he found that he could only use Izanagi to fight against Sasuke's attack, Danzo also directly urged the remaining 9 normal 3-tomo Sharingan on his arm to cast Izanagi. Izanagi. When Sasuke's long sword was about to attack Danzo's body, Danzo finally finished casting Izanagi using the Sharingan on his arm. The silver long sword flashing with lightning and sword aura directly passed through Danzo's body. The feeling of his own attack not hitting the body made Sasuke feel very uncomfortable in his heart. But Sasuke will not stop his attack just because his attack missed. He immediately turned his sword around and launched his own attack on Danzo. Sword after sword, the silver long sword in Sasuke's hand constantly slashed Danzo's body, but Sasuke's attack penetrated Danzo's body again and again. Damn. Looking at Danzo standing in front of him, who had withstood his attacks for nearly 2 minutes, but he still looked unscathed, this situation made Sasuke's heart anxious. Because Sasuke has seen Wood Leaf Ninja Village's 4th Hokage wave Kaze Watergate almost cleared the root ninja around him. Sasuke really didn't know whether Watergate would prioritize himself or Danzo, so he could only speed up his attack frequency to try to cause damage to Danzo. At this moment, although Danzo looked calm, in fact, he was also very anxious. Although he could use Izanagi to resist Danzo's continuous attacks, he didn't have the blood of the Uchiha clan after all. He only relied on the arm made from Senju Takuma's Mokutan cells to forcibly suppress the power of Sharingan, so each Sharingan could only sustain Izanagi for 1 minute. Counting the Sharingan consumed to deal with Mifune before, now Danzo can use Izanagi for only 7 minutes. At most, he can only cast it for 7 minutes. In 7 minutes, he must control Sasuke and let Sasuke achieve his goal. Mokutan, cutting jutsu. Finally, Danzo decided not to hold back any cards and directly used the fastest speed to defeat Uchiha Sasuke. Danzo directly took out his right hand, which was originally wrapped in bandages, and printed with both hands. A Mokutan ninjutsu was instantly completed. Almost all the chakra in his body was used to activate the cutting jutsu, and huge wooden thorns directly attacked Sasuke. Because of the large amount of chakra input, these wooden thorns summoned by Mokutan even had a little iron luster. Sasuke saw such an overwhelming number of wooden thorns attacking him, and his heart was also alert. Regardless of his eye power consumption and his physical fatigue, Sasuke once again summoned Susanoo, which was used to defend against Danzo's vacuum wave. The blue-purple ribs directly wrapped Sasuke in it. The difference was that this time, Susanoo actually had an extra right arm skeleton, and in the skeleton's hand was a black giant sword condensed with black Amaterasu flames. Using the black giant sword to cut off some of the wooden thorns with black iron luster, Susanoo on his body also blocked a lot of cutting jutsu attacks. But facing Danzo, who has completely ignored the burden on his body, Sasuke was still inferior. And the wooden thorns created by cutting jutsu attacked Sasuke from a variety of tricky angles under Danzo's control. Many places that Susanoo and the black giant sword couldn't protect. Finally, a huge wooden thorn was directly inserted into Sasuke's body. While this wooden thorn was inserted into Sasuke's body, it also constantly absorbed the chakra in Sasuke's body, and also caused Sasuke extreme pain. The stronger the pain, the lower the precision of Sasuke's control of Susanoo. With the passage of time, the Susanoo wrapped around Sasuke's body has slowly dissipated, and Sasuke's eyes were bleeding uncontrollably at this moment. The blurred vision and the tingling pain from his brain made Sasuke want to faint now, but the injuries caused by cutting jutsu constantly made Sasuke recover from the verge of fainting again. Seeing that Sasuke's body has been directly controlled by the cutting jutsu created by wood release, Danzo finally stopped his chakra output. Although his steps were a little weak, the joy of controlling Sasuke and implementing his plan made Danzo feel that he was full of strength now. A person who was labeled as a wood leaf rebel ninja, at this moment, is risking his life to create a future for wood leaf. Shimura Danzo, is he a selfish person or a selfless person? Chapter 5:19. With his somewhat staggered steps, Danzo finally dragged his tired body to Sasuke's side. At this moment, Namikaze Watergate had also escaped from the Root Ninja's entanglement and directly launched his Sanjiao Kunai and used the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. Watergate directly appeared beside Danzo. Shimura Danzo, you. Looking at Danzo, Watergate just opened his mouth to call out Danzo's name, but when he saw Danzo untie his right eye, which had been covered by the white bandage, all his words were directly blocked in his mouth. With a red background and a black four-cornered windmill pattern, isn't this the eye of the Uchiha clan, Manjikyu Sharingan? Moreover, this Manjikyu Sharingan in Danzo's eyes is smart and has some kind of deterrent power. Danzo's Manjikyu Sharingan and his student Kakashi's Manjikyu Sharingan are on a completely different level. What method did Shimura Danzo use to install such a powerful eye in his eye socket, and even use such a legendary Sharingan that only members of the Uchiha clan can use perfectly? Namikaze Watergate. No, fourth Hokage. My life is for the sake of the wood leaf. Every scar on my body is not for myself, but for the sake of the wood leaf. I once missed the opportunity to become Hokage, and since then, I have been secretly annoyed and regretful. If it wasn't Yuan Fei, but I took the initiative to take the task of attracting the attention of Goldhorn and Silverhorn, would I also become Hokage? This kind of annoyance and regret suddenly floated in my heart like a ball of flame. Every day, every minute, every second, I was tormented by this ball of flame. In order to prove that I am not worse than Yuan Fei, I resolutely seized power from Yuan Fei's hands. With the Umbu as the foundation, plus some of my own plans, I established the woodleaf root. Root became more and more powerful under my leadership. At its peak, it even replaced the dark group, making the dark group the laughingstock of everyone. My root is the sharpest weapon guarding the dark place of the woodleaf. When Danzo said this, even Watergate could feel the strong sense of pride in Danzo's heart. He wasn't any worse than the third Hokage Sarutobi, it was just that his luck wasn't on his side. As long as I am given a platform to show my ability, I will be able to do better than anyone else. But everything has a high point and a low point. When the pride in Danzo's eyes reached its peak, a haze shrouded Danzo's eyes. But after the succession of Minato and Watergate, and the betrayal of Orochimaru, Root suffered an unprecedented blow. Root's power began to shrink, and the resources we can get are getting less and less. At this time, I am not only representing myself, Shimura Danzo, but also the countless Root ninjas who have sacrificed their lives for the woodleaf in the dark. I have to fight. I can only fight. I want to fight for a chance for Root to survive. I want my revenge to not end in vain. So I began to propose a variety of plans, all of which have an extremely huge impact. In order to make these plans succeed, in order to let people see the necessity of Root's existence, I have become crazy. Because there are some things that can only be realized if one is willing to fall into a state of madness. But it was this kind of madness that made me indulge in it, and I began to care less about human lives. Even if I supported Orochimaru's human experiment at the beginning, I only provided him with some corpses or the bodies of ninjas from other ninja villages. In the end, Orochimaru was not satisfied with such a small supply and began to capture civilians and ninjas. I still remember that I even laughed at Orochimaru's ignorance and short-sightedness, but when I fell into such a situation myself, I finally understood that some things, once started, will never end. Danzo's eyes were red at this moment. Although he has killed a lot of people in his life, whenever Danzo thinks of the civilians and ninjas of the woodleaf because of some of his experiments, he still finds it very difficult to accept. But such a thing has really happened, and the blood of these woodleaf civilians and ninjas has been stained by Danzo's hands, and there is no way to wash it clean. You know, when you and Nangongzhi appeared in Root's base, although I was a little annoyed, I also felt relieved. Because all of you are actually the ones who will end the demons that I have released. Only existences like you can stop Root from going astray and stop it from dancing in the red shoes. So, although I still have a little resentment in my heart for you and Nangongzhi, I don't hate you that much, because I know that you are doing the right thing. After saying that, the Mangekyo Sharingan in Danzo's right eye slowly rotated, forcing the half-unconscious Sasuke's slightly drooping eyes to open. Danzo stared at Sasuke's eyes, then said, "I know I can't live. Even if I can still try my best to continue living, this is not the best situation for Konoha. Therefore, I need to sacrifice my life for the sake of Konoha. The last worm on a big tree like Konoha can't survive. I was ready to sacrifice my life before coming here, but at the same time, I want to offer my last gift for Woodleaf. A gift that is enough to keep Woodleaf stable for decades to come. Now, I will wrap this gift beautifully." Mangekyo Sharingan, Kodo Amatsukami. When Danzo said the last word, a black line of blood began to ooze out of Danzo's right eye socket, just like when Sasuke used Susanoo before. Danzo's last and most powerful card, Kodo Amatsukami, was launched. Chapter 520. Under the guidance of the Mangekyo Sharingan in his eyes, Danzo's own spiritual force began to invade Sasuke's mind. Sasuke, who has Mangekyo Sharingan, has extremely powerful spiritual force, but with the help of a powerful ninjutsu like Kodo Amatsukami, coupled with the fact that Sasuke's body and spiritual force have reached an extremely tired state, Danzo's spiritual force has also invaded Sasuke's mind. Adding the will of Guardian would leaf directly into Sasuke's subconsciousness and more inexplicable brain areas. Danzo began to modify and delete Sasuke's memory. This behavior consumed a lot of Danzo's spiritual force, and Danzo's spiritual force was almost exhausted before he finally finished modifying Sasuke's consciousness. And all this happened in a short moment from the outside world. In Watergate's perspective, Danzo's face began to pale almost after Danzo and Sasuke's eyes met. That kind of paleness was not only the kind of paleness after excessive consumption, but also a kind of paleness of vitality. After ending his plan, Danzo's body finally couldn't support Danzo to continue standing like this, and fell straight to the ground. Almost exhausted his last bit of strength, Danzo waved at Watergate, apparently preparing to say something to Watergate. As the saying goes, when a bird is about to die, its cry is sad, and when a man is about to die, his words are kind. For Danzo at this moment, Watergate has lowered his inner guard to the lowest level. He slowly walked to Danzo's side, and slowly put his ear to Danzo's side. Seeing Watergate's defenseless attitude, even Danzo's heart was filled with a kind of joy at the moment. Forcing a smile from the corner of his mouth, Danzo said to Watergate a little weakly, "From today on, Uchiha Sasuke will use the last drop of blood in his life to guard Woodleaf. Now take my right eye out of my eye socket, and after 10 years, this eye will have the possibility to be used again. Kodoamatsukami will be another gift I leave to Woodleaf. As long as I have this ability, I can turn anyone into a puppet of the caster. Woodleaf's future depends on you. Woodleaf's fourth Hokage? Mina Watergate." Almost exhausted his last strength, Danzo shouted the name Watergate. For Danzo, maybe he doesn't like Watergate that much, but as the Hokage of Woodleaf, Watergate deserves to be called the Hokage. Danzo's last roar seems to have become the loudest voice that has been hidden in the darkness for almost all of his life. After hearing Danzo's words, all the root ninjas who were risking their lives to fight the Kage and their entourage of the 5 great shinobi villages immediately stopped their movements and directly jumped into the darkness and disappeared. The root ninjas were already instructed before the mission. As long as their leader Shimura Danzo shouted the title, 4th Hokage, at the last moment, they will immediately stop any action and directly retreat. Everyone will return to the base that Shimura Danzo used during his wandering in the shinobi world and bring all the important information to Woodleaf Shinobi Village. Seeing the disappearance of the root ninjas around him, Nangongja finally retracted his sword, which seemed to have never been unsheathed from beginning to end, and put it back on his back. Yes, Nangongja was entangled for so long, but in fact, he never used his power. Just like Nangongja, the Kage and their entourage of other shinobi villages were entangled. Unless their strength was really not that outstanding, they were all acting. The Kage and their entourage of the other villages naturally had the mentality of watching a show between Konoha and Konoha's rebellious ninja, and they were slightly looking forward to getting some secret information that was covered up by Konoha. After seeing Sasuke's appearance, Minamiya wanted to see how Sasuke's progress was during this period of time, so he maliciously went easy on him. Even Watergate had the same mentality at the beginning, hoping to see both Sasuke and Danzo suffer. It wasn't until Danzo began to show his would-release ninjutsu that Watergate couldn't hold back his emotions and directly repelled the root ninjas around him and came to the battlefield of Sasuke and Danzo. Because of the distance, Nangongja didn't see the process of Danzo using Kodoamatsukami on Sasuke, nor Danzo's final explanation to Watergate. So at this moment, Nangongja didn't have any anxious mentality. Instead, he walked slowly to Watergate and Sasuke's side. As long as Sasuke didn't die immediately, Nangongja was confident that he could directly pull Sasuke back from the jaws of death. Walking to Danzo's side, Nangongja casually glanced at Danzo's state. Nangongja didn't pay too much attention to Danzo's chest and the right eye socket that had turned into a bloody hole. Instead, he walked to Sasuke's side and began to check Sasuke's injuries. Obviously, Sasuke's body had been penetrated by so many wooden thorns made by Cutting's jutsu, but his body didn't have any serious injuries except for excessive blood loss. After seeing this situation, Nangongja realized that something was wrong. Why would Danzo deliberately preserve Sasuke's life like this? Although Danzo was also a person who loved talents, Sasuke and Danzo had a blood feud. Why would Danzo save Sasuke's life? Nangong Jounin. Please take Sasuke back to Woodleaf Ninja Village first. After arriving at Woodleaf, directly order Kiba Hospital's Dean, Tsunade Senju. Woodleaf's 4th Hokage, Watergate, request Kiba Hospital to use all means to treat Uchiha Sasuke. As for the 5 Kages tournament here, Nara Shikamaru and I will jointly deal with the related matters. Although Watergate's tone had some sense of command at the moment, Nangongja had no intention to care about these things with Watergate at the moment. What did Minato and Danzo do to Sasuke during his moment of carelessness? How can he make Sasuke return to normal? This is what Nangongja was most concerned about at this moment. So after nodding slightly to Watergate, Nangongja directly broke all the wooden thorns inserted into Sasuke's body. After a short bandage, he directly held Sasuke and disappeared in the direction of Woodleaf Ninja Village. Chapter 521. Ignoring the fact that Watergate brought Shikamaru, Nara and several other Kage from other ninja villages to discuss a plan to fight against Akatsuki's Eye of the Moon project, Nangongja brought Sasuke to the gate of Kiba Hospital. In fact, Nangongja could take Sasuke back to the Bloodcloth Pavilion and treat Sasuke with the medical level of the Bloodcloth Pavilion's Aoki altar. However, since Minato has asked him to take Sasuke back to Konoha Hospital and let the famous medical ninja in the ninja world, Katsuyuki Tsunade, treat Sasuke, Nangongja naturally didn't want to easily expose the fact that he had a close relationship with the Bloodcloak Pavilion. Just as he arrived at the door of Konoha Hospital with Sasuke, before Nangongja had time to enter, a figure with golden hair walked out of Konoha Hospital. Nangongja and the figure happened to meet face to face. When the child with golden hair saw Sasuke in Nangongja's arms, although he was bandaged to a certain extent, he still looked seriously injured. His eyes were as round as copper bells. Uncle Nangong and Sasuke? What's wrong with you, uncle? Why did you bring Sasuke back to Woodleaf? And Sasuke suffered such a serious injury. This figure was naturally Uzumaki Naruto, who had a deep bond with Sasuke. Naruto's mother, Shinakushina, worked in Kiba Hospital, so meeting Naruto here wasn't a novel thing. But at this moment, Nangongja was no longer in the mood to explain too much to Naruto. Although Sasuke didn't suffer any fatal injuries under Danzo's deliberate control, the large amount of chakra extracted from his body and the severe blood loss put Sasuke directly into a more dangerous situation. Along the way, Nangongja took Sasuke all the way and used his internal strength to constantly protect the weak organs and tendons in Sasuke's body. The land of iron and the land of fire were extremely far away. Now Sasuke's physical condition had reached the point where it affected his life and death, so Nangongja quickly said to Naruto, "Don't say so much. Go to Tsunade-sama immediately. Tell her that it is your father's order. Let Kiba Hospital do their best to treat Uchiha Sasuke's injuries." Hearing Nangongja's words, Naruto finally realized the seriousness of Sasuke's injuries. With a face full of anxiety, Naruto rushed back to Kiba Hospital. Naruto, who was a little reckless, became more reckless when he saw Sasuke was seriously injured and in urgent need of treatment. He directly began to shout in the corridor of Kiba Hospital, "Grandma Tsunade! Grandma Tsunade! Come out and save someone, there is a seriously injured person who needs treatment." All women want to be praised for their youth, but Naruto now directly called her Grandma. Although this title has existed for a long time, whenever Naruto called her that, Tsunade couldn't suppress the anger in her heart. "Naruto, you bastard, shut up." Tsunade's voice also echoed in the building of Kiba Hospital, and Nangongja could only silently glance at the hospital keep quiet sign hanging on the wall of Kiba Hospital. A helpless expression flashed on his face. Carrying Sasuke to Kiba Hospital, the nurses and doctors of Kiba Hospital also quickly surrounded them. He took Sasuke from Nangongja's arms, put Sasuke on the movable bed, and took Sasuke to the emergency room for emergency treatment. Tsunade also came to the hall of Kiba Hospital under Naruto's pull. The moment she entered the hall, Tsunade had already seen Nangongja standing outside the emergency room. Nangongja saw Tsunade, immediately bowed slightly to Tsunade, and then said to Tsunade, "Tsunade-sama, according to the order of Yandame Hokage Watergate, I ask Tsunade-sama to do her best to treat Uchiha Sasuke. You must ensure that there are no hidden injuries on Sasuke's body, and let Sasuke's body recover to its peak state." Tsunade heard Nangongja's words, nodded to Nangongja, and then said to Nangongja, "Of course, a doctor has the heart of a parent. I will naturally do my best to treat every patient sent to me. Now I will gather all the doctors who are free to treat Uchiha Sasuke with me." After that, Tsunade walked directly to the emergency room under the guidance of the nurse. Naruto was not a staff member of Kiba Hospital, so he was also blocked outside the emergency room and stood with Nangongja. "Uncle Nangong, what happened to Sasuke? Didn't you and Oyaji go to the meeting called 5 Kage Summit? Why did you suddenly bring Sasuke back?" Seeing the deep doubts in Naruto's eyes, Nangongja knew that if he didn't explain the whole story to Naruto, this guy would definitely pester him. Therefore, Nangongja also made a slight cut to a certain extent, and told Naruto what happened in the 5 Kage Summit. Itachi Uchiha? Hoodlum? Shimura Danzo? Akatsuki's plan? The origin of Bijou? After listening to Nangongja's brief description of what happened in this 5 Kage Summit, Naruto's face gradually became deep. After all, Naruto himself was a member of the Woodleaf Nine Tails column force. Everything that happened in this 5 Kage Summit was actually closely related to Naruto. I didn't expect Sasuke to join Akatsuki and even help them collect Bijou. But Uncle Nangong, there is one thing I still don't understand. Sasuke's position is almost completely on the opposite side of Woodleaf. With my understanding of Oyaji, it is absolutely impossible for him to easily let go of anyone who is hostile or threatening to Woodleaf. Why is Oyaji willing to forgive Sasuke this time, and even let Uncle Nangong take Sasuke directly back to Woodleaf for treatment, and even used his identity as Hokage to order Kiba Hospital to treat Sasuke? Is Naruto stupid? Not stupid at all. At this moment, everything that Naruto said was reasonable. Similarly, the question that Naruto asked was also the question that Nangongja cared about. What made Watergate let down his guard against Sasuke? Nangongja himself didn't understand. You should wait for your father to finish dealing with the 5 Kage Summit, and ask your father after he comes back. To be honest, I don't understand now. Chapter 522. The operation went very smoothly. The wound was treated appropriately in the early stages of the injury, so there were not many adverse symptoms. The only tricky thing is that the time between the injury and the treatment is a little long. Although I can solve these problems with medical ninjutsu, I still need to observe the patient in the intensive care unit for a while to determine whether the patient's recovery is normal. But his injury looks like it was very similar to the damage caused by his grandfather, the first Hokage of Konoha. Senju Hashirama's unique would release ninjutsu. Tsunade didn't say this out loud, but Tsunade was sure that Nangongja already understood the doubts in her heart. Now that Naruto was still there, some things couldn't be said so openly. Tsunade wasn't so sure whether Nangongja would tell her the truth, so Tsunade could only use this slightly obscure way to express her importance and doubts to Nangongja. Nangongja secretly conveyed his gaze to Tsunade. Obviously, now wasn't the best time to discuss this matter, so Tsunade could only nod to Nangongja and keep silent. Grandma Tsunade. Hearing Tsunade's sudden words, Naruto felt a little dizzy, so he quickly asked Tsunade, "How is Sasuke now? Can I go in and take a look at his condition?" Hearing Naruto's address, Tsunade, who originally looked quite worried, directly waved her iron fist at Naruto, and directly smashed Naruto from his standing position to the ground. Tsunade clenched her fist and said to Naruto, "Naruto, you little bastard, pay attention to the way you address me. I don't look old, I still look young and beautiful, I'm still 18 years old." He suddenly got punched, but Naruto didn't seem to realize what he did wrong. Instead, he touched his head and muttered, "Huh, I didn't do anything wrong. Obviously, you're already married to that perverted sage, and we're of the same generation. Perverted sage looks like he's worthy of being called grandpa, so what's wrong with me calling you grandma? Although Naruto was just laughing and muttering, with Tsunade's Kage-level sharp perception, she could easily hear the words from Naruto's mouth. Another wave of anger surged in her heart, but Tsunade was obviously too lazy to teach Naruto a lesson. After being beaten so many times, he still didn't realize what he said wrong. Tsunade could only feel very powerless. With a slightly angry expression, Tsunade said to Naruto, "You want to see Sasuke? Don't think about it. Unless you have my permission, no one should think about visiting Sasuke in the intensive care unit." Of course, Tsunade's words at the moment weren't just because Naruto was angry with her. After all, Uchiha Sasuke's identity was still very special. On the surface, Uchiha Sasuke was still a rebellious ninja of Woodleaf Ninja Village, but now she had to treat Sasuke under the order of Hokage. Such a thing couldn't be disclosed before Watergate returned to Woodleaf. Just after treating Sasuke, Tsunade immediately issued a gag order to all doctors and nurses involved in the treatment. But Naruto didn't know about these things. At this moment, Naruto only felt that he had just said something wrong, so he immediately pitifully followed Tsunade like a puppy, nodding and begging Tsunade to let him have the opportunity to visit Sasuke. Seeing that everything was almost solved, Nangongjia also shook his head, turned around, and walked towards his home from Kiba Hospital. After all, there were still his family members waiting for him at home. Although the time he left Woodleaf wasn't long, it wasn't a short period of time. For Nangongjia, the most important thing was to do everything possible to share his life with his family. Time passed a little bit, Nangongjia returned to Woodleaf Ninja Village at noon, and now it was almost midnight. Let's not talk about how Nangongjia and his family missed each other after returning home. Let's temporarily put our eyes back on Kiba Hospital. After all, Kiba Hospital was a public institution, so Kiba Hospital had a very regular time to go to work, get off work, and rest. It was close to midnight, and in addition to the nurses and doctors on duty, there were only patients lying on the beds in Kiba Hospital. In the intensive care unit of Kiba Hospital, Sasuke was lying on a bed covered with white sheets. Instruments with ninja characteristics were placed beside Sasuke to monitor Sasuke's physical characteristics. At that moment, Sasuke's face didn't look so good. A sickly pale color appeared on Sasuke's face. Beads of cold sweat constantly squeezed out from Sasuke's forehead and dripped onto the pillow under the influence of gravity. Not only the pillow, but the sheets under Sasuke's body were also soaked with sweat from Sasuke's body. How painful was Sasuke? From Sasuke's tightly knitted eyebrows, it was enough to see that all of this was because of some unexpected situation in the depths of Sasuke's soul. A long time ago, when Nangongjia went to rescue Sanbai, who was being held captive by Akatsuki, Sanbai said a lot of things that people couldn't understand. Combined with Hoodlum's Eye of the Moon project and the existence of the Jubi, it wasn't hard to discover that the tailed beasts knew that they would be forcefully collected and reformed into the Jubi in the near future. All of this was like a dark hand constantly manipulating everything in the dark, making ninja and even Bijou unable to resist such a fate. At this moment, if Nangongjia was here, it was not difficult to find that the natural force that belonged to heaven and earth was constantly gathering around Sasuke and constantly instilling it into Sasuke's body in a secret way. After these natural forces entered Sasuke's body, they immediately rushed into the depths of Sasuke's brain and constantly impacted the memories in Sasuke's mind that were modified by Kodo Amatsukami. It was such a confrontation in the depths of the brain that made Sasuke suffer, but such a confrontation seemed to be controlled by some power, and it became extremely hidden and difficult to detect. Even the various precision instruments connected to Sasuke's body were difficult to detect. Chapter 523. Loyalty to Woodleaf. Guard Woodleaf. Dedicate everything to Woodleaf. Nothing is more important to you than Woodleaf. No, I still have my father, I still have my mother, and I still have the mission that my brother entrusted to me at the last moment. I don't exist for Woodleaf, I exist for my family. At this moment, Sasuke's eyes were filled with endless darkness. Such darkness was so deep, like the most terrible cage in the world, enveloping Sasuke in it. A slightly old voice kept echoing in Sasuke's ears. Such a voice seemed to have a special power, making all of Sasuke's resistance seem to be futile. If Sasuke could see his body at this moment, it would not be difficult to find that nearly half of his body was covered by a scarlet mist. A will that was almost like a command continued to attack Sasuke. This will has been instilling a belief in Sasuke that loyalty to Woodleaf guard Woodleaf. But Sasuke didn't want to be affected by such a will. At this moment, Sasuke just wanted to do his best to escape the shackles of such a will. Gradually, Sasuke's dark eyes unconsciously turned into Manjikyu Sharingan with his own hexagram pattern. The hexagram pattern kept rotating in it, and even a strand of blood was forced out of the eye sockets because of the surge of eye power and psychic power. I don't live for Woodleaf. The only thing that can make me sacrifice my life and everything I have is what I believe in. Woodleaf, 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 it has never been my belief. Not. Sasuke shouted loudly toward the sky, but still couldn't stop the red mist from covering his body. Finally, Sasuke was completely wrapped in the mist. His roaring and shouting seemed to be strangled in an instant, and all of them stopped abruptly. Sasuke's mouth whispered softly, and the voice of the voice was faintly similar to the old voice that had been eroding him before. Loyalty? Woodleaf. God. Woodleaf. Everything I have. Dedicated to Woodleaf. For me, there is nothing more important than Woodleaf. Everything. Dedicated to Woodleaf. The Manjikyu Sharingan, which was originally spinning wildly in Sasuke's eyes, had slowly disappeared at this moment. Sasuke's eyes returned to their original black color, but at this moment, the black eyes seemed to have lost their focus, and numbness and stupor filled Sasuke's eyes. Thus, in the void, a sigh quietly sounded. He didn't expect that Indra would become like this one day, but how could Indra, the most rebellious and determined person in the world, become like this? Let me help you restore your own nature. What's the use of control? How can people defeat heaven? On the edge of the bed in Sasuke's ward, a crow quietly appeared there without anyone noticing. However, from time to time, the crow's figure would become illusory, as if it wasn't a real existence. In the crow's eyes, a Manjikyu Sharingan in the shape of a four-cornered pinwheel slowly rotated. Kodoemitsukami? Release it. A will from the void gave the crow an order, and the four-cornered pinwheel in the crow's eyes rotated quickly. A golden mist that people couldn't detect gushed out of the crow's eyes. This mist seemed to be controlled by a mighty force and began to cover Sasuke's body, and it constantly drilled into Sasuke's body. In Sasuke's spiritual world, Sasuke, who had lost his self-consciousness because of the red mist, suddenly became different at this moment. A golden light suddenly rushed out of Sasuke's eyes. Like the sun dispelling the morning fog, the red mist that originally covered Sasuke's body had disappeared almost instantly. Finally, the paleness on Sasuke's face was expelled, and a healthy rosy color slowly emerged under Sasuke's skin. Sasuke's eyes suddenly opened at this moment, and a golden light rushed out of Sasuke's eyes directly. Seeing that Sasuke's spirit had fully recovered, the crow, who was standing on the window in a trance, completely disappeared at this moment. The golden light in Sasuke's eyes only lasted for a moment, and then Sasuke's eyes were filled with a little confusion. This is? Sasuke's memory was still stuck at the time when he was defeated by Danzo, but why did he suddenly open his eyes at this moment and find himself lying on a hospital bed? Taking a deep breath of the air with a slight smell of disinfectant around him, Sasuke didn't know why he felt a familiar feeling. He directly pulled off the electromagnetic sheet attached to his body, ignoring the sophisticated instrument that sounded an alarm because of the removal of the electromagnetic sheet. Sasuke slowly walked to the window of his room. Looking at the familiar and strange street outside the window, Sasuke finally understood where he was at this moment. So that's how it is. Am I back in Woodleaf? Woodleaf. He didn't know why. When Sasuke said the name of Woodleaf, a kind of unexplained disgust from his heart filled his heart. It was as if Konoha had done something very unforgivable to him. Although his body was still a little weak, Sasuke still picked up his sword on his bed, climbed to the window in front of him, and directly disappeared into the night view of Woodleaf. When Sasuke's figure just disappeared, the doctors and nurses of Kiba Hospital heard the alarm sound from the sophisticated instrument that detected Sasuke's physical condition. At this moment, they only saw the white curtain dancing in the night wind. Immediately inform Tsunoda. Tell her that Uchiha Sasuke is missing. The doctor was obviously an experienced ninja. He immediately gave the order to the nurse standing next to him. Looking at the nurse's back, the doctor's heart was full of melancholy. He didn't expect that a person who was clearly mentally damaged could recover his ability to move freely in such a short time. He didn't know how Tsunade-sama would punish him after knowing this. Chapter 524. Deep into the night, everything fell into silence. Perhaps only the lonely sound of insects and birds echoed in the air from time to time conveyed the vitality of life to this world. But this scene of silence and vitality was broken by the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. Nangongja was a very vigilant person, and Nangongja set up a barrier around his house, so no matter who entered the range of Nangongja's house, Nangongja could immediately detect such a situation. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. Nangongja was standing in the courtyard of his house with his Heaven's Disaster Sword. A figure suddenly jumped over the wall of Nangongja's house, but after jumping over the wall, this person seemed to have completely lost his ability to move and fell directly to the open space. Some dust even splashed in the air because of this person's fall. The grass on the ground stuck to the hospital gown worn by this person, and Nangongja also slowly walked to this person's side after seeing everything clearly. Sasuke? Looking at this person, Nangongja slowly called out his name. But even if he heard his name, Uchiha Sasuke, who fell to the ground, had no strength to respond at all. At this moment, Uchiha Sasuke really fell into a deep coma. Uchiha Sasuke's body was very weak, and after that, he experienced a spiritual battle that was close to torture. After leaving Kiba Hospital, hiding his whereabouts all the way to the relatively remote Nangongja's house, it can be said that Sasuke's body and spirit had completely overdrawn. At the moment when he arrived at Nangongja's house, Sasuke seemed to have slightly relaxed the string in his heart. The feeling of physical and mental exhaustion at the same time directly defeated Sasuke. Looking at Uchiha Sasuke, who was sent to Kiba Hospital at noon, Nangongja's brows slowly frowned together, obviously thinking about something. From the moment when Watergate ordered him to bring Uchiha Sasuke back to Woodleaf, Nangongja knew that either Watergate or Danzo must have done something to Sasuke. However, Nangongja couldn't find out what kind of trick this was. It could directly make Watergate put down his hostility towards Sasuke. Now Sasuke must have secretly left Kiba Hospital. Should he accept Uchiha Sasuke and let Sasuke stay in his house? It has to be said that Nangongja really appreciated Sasuke, but because of this appreciation, Nangongja put the safety of his family on the balance. Such a decision was not so easy for Nangongja to make. What's wrong? Behind Nangongja, Mishiro's voice suddenly came. Unlike the inexperienced Nangong-ro and Little Linger, Mishiro was also a person who had seen a lot of storms. From the moment Nangongja stood in his courtyard with his long sword, Mishiro was already aware of all this. When he saw Nangongja standing in front of the person who invaded his house and fell into deep thought, Mishiro slowly walked to Nangongja's side and began to ask Nangongja. Of course, at the same time, Mishiro also saw Uchiha Sasuke, who fainted in his courtyard. After Nangongja returned, he told Mishiro about his experience in the 5 Kages tournament. After all, Nangongja always thought that Mishiro's wisdom was not below his. In some cases, Mishiro's performance in dealing with some unexpected situations even surpassed Nangongja himself. Sasuke? It seems that he sneaked out of Kiba Hospital by himself. Looking at Sasuke, Mishiro quickly analyzed part of Sasuke's situation. After hearing Mishiro's words, Nangongja also slowly nodded, and then said to Mishiro, "Yes, I sent Sasuke to Kiba Hospital at noon. Although he went through some treatment, Tsunade-sama also told me that there are some problems on the spiritual level of Sasuke. But this kind of thing involves the spiritual level, even Tsunade-sama can't do anything about it. So Tsunade-sama left Uchiha Sasuke in Kiba Hospital for observation. I didn't expect that in just a few hours, Sasuke had already regained his consciousness. And what I didn't expect was that Sasuke actually came directly to our house. I don't know whether I should take Sasuke in or not. After all, it involves a lot of changes that we can't fully expect. Nangongja's words were very clear and directly threw out his most tangled part. After hearing Nangongja's tangled part, Mishiro also understood why Nangongja was so unstable. Over the years, Watergate has become more and more like a qualified leader. Although Watergate has always shown a very amiable attitude to everyone, Mishiro also knew some of Watergate's ruthless actions secretly through the Blood Cloak Pavilion's intelligence system. If an analogy had to be made, the current Namikaze Minato is no longer like a powerful ninja full of sunshine that inspires everyone, but more like a ruthless tyrant who is very good at hiding in the shadows. If his family took Sasuke in, it would be fine if there was no problem. But once there was a problem, according to the current Watergate's character, he would absolutely not tolerate Nangongja's behavior. Being able to let Nangongja drift away from his command was already the maximum range that Watergate could tolerate Nangongja. Once Nangongja intentionally crossed the tacit line between the two, then Watergate would never be lenient. Shimura Danzo's example was in front of him. Even if he held the Woodleaf's root in his hand, because he stood in front of Watergate, Shimura Danzo was still destroyed by Watergate at any cost. Now, Danzo seemed to have died in the hands of Watergate. Miyagi. Looking at Nangongja, Mishiro thought for a long time and said to Nangongja, I think we should keep Sasuke. Although there may be some dangers, it is obviously more beneficial for us to keep Sasuke. After all, the Woodleaf is just a place for us to live, our roots are not here, right? Chapter 525. That's right, Nangongja actually stepped into a misunderstanding just now. Although his family was now living in Woodleaf, Woodleaf was not so indispensable for his family. The reason why Nangongja brought his family to live in Woodleaf was not to seek the protection of Woodleaf, but only because Woodleaf made his family more comfortable than other places. What Nangongja was now struggling with was that Watergate might use his own means to threaten his family after taking in Sasuke, but his family had nowhere to go. Nangongja was not only a person who had the title of Yama of Woodleaf, but also a person who had the title of Bloodcloth Pavilion. Without Woodleaf, for Nangongja, there was still Bloodcloth Pavilion, wasn't there? Although there hadn't been any big movements over the years, the development speed of Bloodcloth Pavilion was actually very amazing. This kind of development might not be so obvious in places like the 5 major countries where there were heavyweight forces. However, in the other small countries, the influence of the Blood Garment Pavilion was increasing day by day. Under the joint planning of several altar masters of the Blood Garment Pavilion and Nangongja, the Blood Garment Pavilion had even secretly controlled several small countries. Indeed, if we offend Watergate or even Woodleaf Village, it is indeed not a good thing. But this is just a tricky thing. We are not afraid to offend Watergate or Woodleaf Village. Now we have to consider whether Uchiha Sasuke is worth the price we pay. With that said, Mishiro's eyes began to look at Uchiha Sasuke, who fell to the ground. In Mishiro's mind, information about Uchiha Sasuke quickly appeared. Uchiha Sasuke, the nominal orphan of Uchiha family. When he was young, because of his brother, Itachi Uchiha, he did not attract much attention. After Itachi Uchiha massacred the Uchiha clan under the threat of Root, Uchiha Sasuke gradually entered the eyes of more people. Uchiha Sasuke has been doing well in Kiba Ninja School, and even excelled in some subjects. However, that was all. It didn't give people too much of a surprise. After graduating from the Ninja Academy, Uchiha Sasuke joined Team 7, led by Hatake Kakashi, who also has Sharingan, and became a member. But what really changed Uchiha Sasuke was after the Woodleaf Chunin exam, Uchiha Sasuke joined Orochimaru's team. During this period, Uchiha Sasuke absorbed a lot of nutrients from Orochimaru and gradually made his name in the ninja world. After that, Uchiha Sasuke has the Uchiha clan's secret Manjikyu Sharingan and showed his powerful strength in the venue of the 5 Kage tournament. Although it was more general, almost all of Uchiha Sasuke's experiences so far have been said by Mishiro. After careful thinking, it's not difficult to find that although Sasuke's experience is legendary, there is still no point for Nangongjia to fall out with Woodleaf. Mia, to be honest, I don't think it's worth falling out with Minato, Watergate, and Woodleaf for Uchiha Sasuke. After listening to Mishiro talk about Sasuke's experience, Nangongjia also slowly calmed down. Mishiro's words are indeed very reasonable. From Uchiha Sasuke's past experience, he doesn't have the advantage of making Nangongjia directly fall out with Woodleaf Village. But what Nangongjia saw was not only the past and the present. Nangongjia has now thought of what may happen in the future. Indeed, from the past experience of Uchiha Sasuke listed by Mishiro, it's indeed not worth the risk of falling out with Minato, Watergate, and Woodleaf Village to take him in, but I don't think what you said is right. With that, Nangongjia slowly bowed his body and carried Uchiha Sasuke's body on the ground on his shoulder. Nangongjia took Uchiha Sasuke into the room and said, "From the first time I saw Uchiha Sasuke, I don't know why there was a throbbing in my heart. This emotion tells me that Uchiha Sasuke is a vital existence. And this feeling has become stronger with the improvement of my understanding and control of the power of heaven and earth. It's like Uchiha Sasuke is a person who is loved by heaven and earth. Although Sasuke has experienced a lot of bad things, if we look at such things again, it's not difficult to find that Sasuke will have a qualitative leap in strength or state of mind after every bad thing. That feeling was as if all these trials and tribulations didn't happen randomly, but happened at the right time. These tribulations are like a whetstone, sharpening Sasuke's sword more and more. Even if my own feeling is wrong, we can also look at the performance of others. In this 5 Kages tournament, whether it's Shimura Danzo or Minato Watergate, they have the ability and opportunity to kill Uchiha Sasuke. But they didn't make a move, and even Minato Watergate ordered me to take Uchiha Sasuke back to the Woodleaf to receive the best treatment. This is a matter that we have to think more about. Is Sasuke really as dispensable as we just analyzed? Nangongjia threw such a question back to Mishiro, then directly turned around and took Uchiha Sasuke to his room. Mishiro stood in place and thought for a long time, but still couldn't come up with an answer. He could only shake his head and wave to a dark corner of Nangongjia's courtyard. A black-clothed man wearing a black robe with the blood-clothed pavilion symbol on the cuffs walked out. Mishiro looked at the black-clothed man, and the usual gentle smile in front of Nangongjia instantly disappeared, and his pretty face was covered with a thick layer of frost. Go out and remove all traces of Uchiha Sasuke coming here, don't leave any flaws. After hearing Mishiro's words, the black-clothed man directly bowed his head respectfully, and his figure flickered and disappeared. Looking at Nangongjia taking Uchiha Sasuke to the room, Mishiro was a little depressed. Chapter 526. Because of Mishiro's arrangement and Sasuke's caution along the way, Sasuke's arrival at Nangongjia's house was not noticed by anyone. Even Tsunade, after hearing about Uchiha Sasuke's disappearance from the ward, directly thought of Nangongjia, who can be said to have served as Sasuke's master to a certain extent and may be fully trusted by Sasuke. However, there was no evidence to prove that Nangongjia took Sasuke in, and Tsunade also adhered to the idea of less trouble and directly sent information about Sasuke's disappearance to Woodleaf Yondaime Hokage Watergate, who was far away in the Land of Iron. As for what Watergate will do after that, it's not something Tsunade can intervene in. At this moment, Watergate didn't have the mind to take care of Sasuke's affairs. Although Watergate was also very concerned about Sasuke, Watergate's mind was completely focused on the discussion of the 5 Kage conference at this moment. Everyone, I believe that after hearing the words of the masked man who called himself Uchiha Madara, you should already know the seriousness of the problem. Although we don't know whether the so-called Eye of the Moon plan is possible or not, The information about the Jubi is enough to raise our attention. How powerful the bijou is, I don't need to go into detail. Please don't include any personal interests, and seriously take the proposal I am about to propose next. Yandame Reikage AI, as the convener of this 5 Kage conference, took over the role of presiding over the meeting after the death of the samurai leader Mifune. At this moment, AI stood in the center of the venue and issued his own initiative to the other 4 Kage around him, and then he said with a serious face, "We don't know what the Akatsuki has, but we must not take it lightly. The bijou collected by the Akatsuki is a huge threat to us and even the entire shinobi world. So I think it's time to form an alliance against the Akatsuki. Our 5 great shinobi villages will work together to completely destroy the Akatsuki. Uniting the 5 great ninja villages? Such a proposal was like throwing an atomic bomb into a pool of water. Everyone's heart was boiling at this moment. Not to mention whether such an alliance can be formed smoothly or not. Once such an alliance really appears in the shinobi world, the power hidden in it is simply unimaginable. With a little bit of means and a little bit of hidden arrangement, it is completely possible to make your shinobi village stand out and become the most powerful existence in the world. As for what AIE just said about not having any selfish motives? Sorry, none of the people present were fools. No one would believe that Aijin was able to do what he called being selfless. Reikage, aren't you overreacting? At the end of the day, the so-called immortal of the 6 paths was nothing but a myth. As for the Jubi mentioned by Uchiha Madara, we have no way to verify it. If you want to mobilize almost the entire ninja world to fight against the Akatsuki just because of such groundless information, isn't it a bit of a fuss? The first one to raise an objection was none other than the oldest of the 5 Kages, Inoki. When A heard Inoki's negative opinion about him, he didn't directly explode with his explosive temper. Instead, he said to Inoki with a little sarcasm, which was out of character, "Don't worry, I'm afraid you won't be able to defeat me. Is our Sandame Tsuchikage-sama scared out of his wits? How can you be so timid? I heard that you almost died in the hands of Uchiha Madara when you were young. Is it because of an unknown person who claims to be Uchiha Madara that our wily Sandame Tsuchikage-sama lost all his fighting spirit? Do you want to be a scared child and run to his mother's arms and cry?" Inoki heard AI's sarcastic words and didn't say anything. Akatsuki and Inoki's granddaughter, Kuratsuchi, who had been standing behind him, directly walked in front of Inoki. The younger Kuratsuchi directly stared at AI with her beautiful eyes and said, "Fourth Reikage-sama, please have some discretion in your words. The one sitting here is our Wagakure's Sandame Tsuchikage-sama. Even if you don't say anything, you two are in the same position. Just talking about age, my grandfather is already your uncle. Could it be that the 4th Reikage of the Cloud Village is such a person who doesn't know the rules at all? If that's the case, it really shows the demeanor of the Lightning Country." Although Kuratsuchi is a woman, but at this moment, under the pressure of her attitude made all the female ninjas present couldn't help but have a look of appreciation in their eyes. Especially Tsurumi Mei, who was the Mizukage of the Mist, at this moment. She was very pleased to see Kuratsuchi's appearance. When she heard that Kuratsuchi could still say what she wanted to say in the face of the Reikage's power, and she didn't even give AI any face, Tsurumi Mei stood up straight from her seat and even clapped her hands and said, "Well said, worthy of being Sandame Tsuchikage-sama's granddaughter. Reikage-sama, although I know that you are eager to form the ninja allied forces, don't throw away your dignity as a Kage because of such eagerness. Here, you are not only representing yourself, but also the entire Kumo Shinobu village. I hope that Reikage-sama can think carefully before speaking. As the leader of the Cloud Village, can you really do whatever you want? I believe that everyone here cares about the shinobi world, and they will never ignore the overall situation of the shinobi world because of their own selfishness. I ask Reikage-sama to be patient. We will definitely come up with a result that will satisfy most people. Isn't this the purpose and meaning of this 5 Kage tournament?" Hearing Tsurumi Mei's words, AI glanced at Kuratsuchi and Tsurumi Mei, murmuring, "A pair of sharp-tongued women," and then sat back in her seat. Chapter 527. Everyone, I actually agree with Reikage-sama's plan to gather the power of the 5 great villages together to deal with the Akatsuki's attack. Seeing that the venue has restored the proper order, Watergate finally stood up from his seat and attached his chakra to his vocal cords. At this moment, Watergate's voice was so clear that it spread throughout the venue. I, who had just sat down on her seat, after hearing Watergate's speech, looked at Watergate with interest. The whole ninja world knows that Woodleaf has always been labeled as benevolent and peace-loving. But such an organization that has always claimed to be peace-loving, at this moment, directly agreed with Reikage's proposal to drag the ninja world into a war. Such a situation indeed made I unable to understand Watergate's plan, but she was very interested in Watergate's explanation. Similar to I, several other Kage present also looked at Watergate, looking forward to what Watergate will say next. As the saying goes, even a lion needs to go all out to catch a rabbit. Anyone who may be in the position of our enemy, we can't have any contempt, but should maintain the greatest vigilance against each of our enemies. This time, the appearance of this masked man who called himself Uchiha Madara is indeed very sudden, but he directly issued a declaration of war in front of our 5 great villages. I don't think such a person who dares to issue a declaration of war in front of us is a bluff. Since he can come to us to declare war, he must have made some preparations. Although we don't know how much power has been accumulated in the hands of Akatsuki, but just from the records of Akatsuki's missions that can be tracked over the years, Akatsuki, as a mercenary organization, has been constantly taking some dark side missions that we can't take, and has accumulated nearly twice the annual income of Woodleaf or even more. If such a large amount of money is completely transformed into all kinds of resources for war regardless of the consequences, how terrible will it be? Woodleaf has always been the most powerful existence among the 5 great villages in terms of money. Can it be comparable to 2 years of income of Woodleaf or even more? How terrible will such financial resources be? Everyone present has already known in their heart how terrible it will be. Since Akatsuki has decided to go to war with the entire ninja world, then they will certainly increase their strength regardless of the consequences. The threat of Akatsuki once again appeared in front of everyone. I also think that we need to unite together to fight against Akatsuki. After hearing Minato's words, Gaara stood up from his seat and said to the others, "Don't worry, Minato. As the Ichibi column force, whose bijou was taken away by Akatsuki, I believe that among us, I should be the most qualified person to say how dangerous Akatsuki is, right? In fact, the one who attacked our Sunagakure was Deidara, who is now dead. If it was one-on-one, I don't think Deidara would pose too much of a threat to me, but the members of Akatsuki can be said to be unscrupulous in their actions. They used the entire Sunagakure as a means to threaten me. Akatsuki is such an organization with no bottom line. If we stand on the opposite side of such an organization, we must not slack off at all. Of the 5 Kages, 4 of them have already expressed their attitude at this moment. Reikage AI, as the one who proposed such a plan, naturally stood from the perspective of a firm supporter, and after that, Watergate and Gaara directly expressed their agreement. The Hokage, Kazuke, Tsuchikage, and Reikage at the same time turned their eyes to the Mizukage-mei, who was sitting in her seat. Mizukage-sama, I don't know what your opinion is? Seeing that everyone seemed to be waiting for her to express her opinion, Terumi-mei also cleared her throat slightly and stood up from her seat. In fact, our country is isolated in the sea. Even if a large-scale war breaks out, our country won't be affected much. This time, it seems that Akatsuki is declaring war on the entire ninja world, but I don't think Akatsuki can cross the vast sea and attack our country directly. Hearing Mei's words, the 4 Kages present all had a change of expression. The country of water is the only country among the 5 great powers that is not so close to the mainland. Such geographical distribution has advantages and disadvantages, but in such a large-scale war, such geographical conditions are the best reason not to participate in the war. I don't want to give up the battle like this. Hearing Hokage-sama and Kaze-sama's description of Akatsuki, I understand one truth. At this moment, Akatsuki is like a hungry tiger. Seeing any worthy target, they will go all out regardless of life and death. At this moment, the 5 great ninja villages are in a relationship of lips and teeth. Otherwise, if any of us is targeted by Akatsuki, they will definitely take a big bite out of us. Therefore, on behalf of Kirigakure, I agree with Reikage-sama's proposal to form an offensive and defensive alliance against Akatsuki. After hearing Mei's statement, Tsuchikage also knew that he couldn't insist on avoiding the war. Iwagakure was likely to become the target of the other Kages. Therefore, Tsuchikage could only nod helplessly and said to the other 4 Kages who obviously agreed with this plan, "Let's go." In that case, Iwagakure has no reason to refuse. The alliance of the 5 great ninja villages involves a lot of things. It seems that our 5 Kage summit will last for a long time. Hearing Tsuchikage's agreement, everyone sat in their seats with satisfaction. Every Kage of the village, even Gaara, who just sat in the Kazekage's position, had a burning flame in his eyes at this moment, not to mention the other Kages who were more accustomed to the position of Kage. They must seize this rare opportunity to win a more important position for their village in the alliance of the 5 great ninja villages. In fact, the war has already begun now. Although they haven't fought with the enemy yet, they have already fallen into an internal dispute. Chapter 528. Finally, on the 5th day after the 4th Reikage AI proposed his plan to form the Ninja Allied Forces, the Kage from the 5 shinobi villages representing the 5 countries finally perfected the Ninja Allied Forces that had never been done before. Such a new way of cooperation made every Kage of every shinobi village eager to dig out greater benefits from it. And when he saw the Kage of each village, who were originally high in his consciousness, in the face of irresistible temptation, they were like ants in the morning market. Shikamaru finally understood what Nangongja said to him before. The Kage is not a saint. The reason why they seem unreachable is just because you haven't walked into their circle. When you really participate in their affairs, it's not difficult to find that they are just ordinary people. For the sake of benefits, for the sake of status, they are still arguing with each other. Even Watergate, who has always been very aloof in Shikamaru's impression, still fell into the world of mortals in the blink of an eye. The so-called Kage is actually a group of ordinary people. Shikamaru's eyes suddenly appeared in front of Nangongja's shadow. Nangongja still looked at him with a bit of indifference and said such a sentence. Indeed, no matter who it is, they are just ordinary people. Standing behind Watergate, looking at the Kage of each village who were either satisfied or expressionless after the distribution of benefits, Shikamaru said such a sentence in his heart. Since the benefits have been distributed, the Kage of the 5 villages gathered here naturally have no reason to stay here. Watergate naturally returned to the Woodleaf village with Shikamaru. The two didn't directly enter the village from the Woodleaf gate. After all, the 5 Kage meeting is actually a secret meeting. The villagers of Woodleaf village don't need to know that their Hokage abandoned his duty to protect the village to hold a meeting for power and profit. Therefore, Watergate and Shikamaru actually entered the Woodleaf village from the entrance specially prepared for Umbu. After parting with Shikamaru, Watergate went directly to his office. In all fairness, Watergate also hopes that he can go home and accompany his family after nearly half a month of absence. The relationship between him and Naruto has just eased a lot. If he can strike while the iron is hot, it will certainly improve greatly. But Watergate is not only a husband and a father, but also the Hokage of the entire Woodleaf village. The safety of the Woodleaf village is carried by Watergate himself. He would rather his family suffer a little grievance than let the entire Woodleaf village suffer. Watergate has already made such an awareness when he just ascended the position of Hokage. Opening the door of his office, Nara Shikaku was sitting on the sofa in the Hokage's office, making comments on a document. It seems that he is too focused on the document in his hand. Even when Watergate entered the room, Shikaku still didn't notice. Looking at the mountain of documents on his desk that are labeled as Top Secret, Hokage Only, and so on, Minato felt a headache coming on for a while. Although he authorized all the daily documents to Shikaku for processing, many things can't be handed over to Shikaku just by authorization. It seems that it is inevitable for him to live in the Hokage's office and deal with these documents labeled as extremely confidential. Shikaku, thank you for your hard work. Walking to Shikaku's side, Watergate stretched out his hand and slowly patted Shikaku's shoulder. Shikaku seems to realize that someone entered the Hokage's office after being patted by Watergate. Because the voice is very familiar to him, Watergate's voice, Shikaku didn't have any excessive reaction. Putting down the document in his hand, Shikaku very politely saluted Watergate, and then said to Watergate, "I'm very sorry, I didn't notice Hokage-sama coming back. During this time, all the documents I can deal with have been processed, and on your desk are the documents that need to be dealt with by the Hokage himself. There are a lot of things to do during this time, and I will have to trouble Hokage-sama to deal with these documents. After all, they have been backlogged for nearly half a month, and many things have been delayed." Looking at Shikaku in front of him, whether it's his posture or his words, Watergate's eyes were in a trance. He can be regarded as a ninja of the same age as Shikaku. In the ninja school, on the battlefield, Watergate has competed and communicated with Shikaku more than once. Perhaps because of their personalities, the relationship between Watergate and Shikaku is quite good. After Watergate became the Hokage, he also let the young Shikaku sit in the position of Woodleaf Ninja Village staff officer. And Shikaku obviously didn't fail to live up to Watergate's trust. From an ordinary staff officer, Shikaku walked step by step to the position of chief of staff with his own means and wisdom. Watergate and Shikaku can be said to have become an unparalleled perfect partner in Woodleaf, but looking at Shikaku, who is trying his best to show respect in front of him at this moment, Watergate's heart sank. No matter what kind of person they are, they will be eager to have someone who can understand them by their side, so that they can reveal some of the unpleasant things in their heart. Originally, for Watergate, Shikaku was such a person. But at this moment, seeing Shikaku's attitude towards him, Watergate knew that he has actually drifted away from Shikaku. All of this is his fault, and Shikaku's own caution. But whether it's Minato or Shikaku, neither of them will regret their decision to walk on different paths at this moment. Perhaps all of this is the inevitable result after Minato ascends to the position of Hokage. Looking at Shikaku faintly saluting him and then leaving the Hokage's office, Watergate slowly walked to the window of his office and looked at the Woodleaf Ninja Village at a glance. Watergate's mouth was full of bitterness and determination, and his mouth whispered slightly, "It's lonely at the top?" I often heard people say that those who call themselves loners will eventually become loners. I didn't believe it at first, but I didn't expect that just the position of Hokage would push me step by step to the point of being a loner. It's really Chapter 529. A few days passed quickly, but these days, Watergate didn't just stay in his office to deal with the documents that have been left on his desk because of his departure. Watergate took out some very important documents from them, and after signing them, Watergate left and issued a summon order to the elders of Kiba and some powerful ninjas. In the past few days, although Watergate has been reviewing documents, he was also waiting for the ninjas who received his summon order to return to Woodleaf Village. War was never something that could be done easily. It involved extremely complicated procedures. The allocation of personnel and the allocation of money were only the most superficial things. When war broke out, it represented a wave of reshuffling of power. If one could obtain enough merits or seize an important position in the war, then one's status and reputation would rise rapidly. From a distance, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru won the title of Sannin in the Second Shinobi World War against the Rain Village's demigod Hanzo the Salamander, and since then, they have been famous in the Shinobi World War. It can be seen that Watergate's Nangongja showed his strength in the Third Shinobi World War and was crowned with the titles Woodleaf's Golden Flash and Woodleaf's Yama. Even if Nangongja, who deliberately lived in seclusion for many years, was still able to shock others after his identity was exposed in this 5 Kage tournament. So in fact, Watergate is also thinking about how to distribute such a huge benefit. Although Watergate also has a direct force that is close to him, after all, such a direct force is actually not that powerful. The dividends that can be brought by a war are not something that his direct forces can eat. Since the cake brought by the war dividend can't be eaten, naturally, there is a problem of division. During this time, Watergate only used about 30 to 40% of his mind to deal with government affairs, and more of it was thinking about how to balance the forces in Woodleaf Village through the division of benefits. Everyone, thank you for putting down your affairs after receiving my order and returning to the ninja village to participate in this meeting. Watergate sat on his seat on the high platform, looking at more than a dozen representatives of the elders of Kiba sitting in front of him. There were already dozens of Woodleaf ninjas who can be called the mainstay. Watergate slowly said. In front of Watergate, Mito Menitis, Xianxia Chun, and some other elders of Kiba's eyes flashed with passion after hearing Watergate's words. As the Woodleaf elders, they were actually the representatives of the family forces in the Woodleaf. Many of the Woodleaf elders were former heads of Woodleaf clans. As the local tyrants of the Woodleaf clans, they naturally obtained some interesting information from their own channels. The war is coming. Most of the Woodleaf ninjas standing behind are veteran ninjas who have experienced the Third Shinobi World War. After receiving the order to complete the task as soon as possible, or even to give up the task and return to the ninja village if the task can't be completed in a short time, it naturally made them feel like a storm is coming. Everyone is standing in front of the Woodleaf clans to protect the Woodleaf clans, so I won't say too many empty words with you. What I want to inform you is the result of this 5 Kage conference's discussion, that is, a war that will sweep the entire shinobi world is about to happen. After hearing Watergate's words, although a few of the ninjas who have not experienced the war exclaimed, most of them were silent. Only those who have experienced the war can really understand how terrible and disgusting war is. Kakashi and Guy, who were also standing in the group of Jonin, also looked at each other at this moment. Even my Guy, who has always been hot-blooded, had a sad look in his eyes at this moment. Kakashi and Guy both lost people who were very important to them because of the war. Is the war going to start again? And it's going to sweep the entire shinobi world? Kakashi was very keen to find the most important keywords from Watergate's words. From the First Shinobi World War a long time ago to the Third Shinobi World War that just passed a few years ago, the most large-scale battle was the battle between at most 4 large shinobi villages. But now Watergate said that the scope of the war is the entire shinobi world, so it includes the 5 major countries together with other small countries. Just the previous war has made many people experience unbearable grief, so how terrible will such a war that sweeps across the shinobi world be? War. Unlike Kakashi at this moment, Guy was still immersed in the impact of the upcoming war. His father, his teammates, and more Woodleaf shinobi who used to fight side by side with him left him one by one. Guy himself is not afraid of death, but he is a little worried about his 3 disciples. Li and Tien have become Chunin, and Niji has become a Jonin because of his outstanding talent. If the war really breaks out, then his disciples will definitely go to the battlefield. The pain of losing people close to him, Guy has experienced it, and he doesn't want to continue to experience it. Although the Woodleaf Elder and Woodleaf Shinobi in front of him have different reactions, Watergate didn't care about such different actions. That was because there was no possibility of this war ending without a cause. This war will sweep across the shinobi world, and the 2 sides will be Amigakure and Akatsuki against all the other countries including the 5 major countries. 1 shinobi village, 1 organization directly against the entire shinobi world? Such a matter was simply as inconceivable as a fairy tale. Even Hatake Kakashi, who had confronted Akatsuki several times in the past, had an incredulous expression on his face at this moment. Although the Akatsuki is very strong, Kakashi never thought that the Akatsuki could have the power of the entire shinobi world. But Watergate will never joke about such a thing. Did the Akatsuki really declare war on the entire shinobi world? What a crazy thing this is, but recalling all the information about the Akatsuki so far, it seems that such behavior is reasonable. Chapter 530. What kind of power is the Akatsuki organization? I believe most of the people present know a little bit about it. But what you know is only some superficial things. Presumably, many people don't understand why the Akatsuki organization can make the 5 great ninja villages in the ninja world so nervous, and even unite together. Looking at the ninja of Woodleaf Village in front of him, Watergate slowly said, and at the same time, he also signaled the row of masked umbu standing beside him to take out the stack of information he had prepared in advance. Now, umbu will release some information for everyone. After reading this information, I think everyone will have a clear understanding of the threat of the Akatsuki organization. Hearing Watergate's words, the umbu ninja also acted one by one. There was not much information, only a few pages, and the elders of Kiba and Jonin present were only dozens of people. Soon, everyone present read the information in their hands, although there were only a few pages, but it was enough to shock anyone. After reading these words, whether it was the elders of Kiba or the surprised newcomers, at this moment, they fell into a long silence. The mysterious person who called himself Uchiha Madara? The Jubi who has a close relationship with the legendary ancestor of the ninja world, the sage of the 6 paths? The Eye of the Moon project to project the Manjikyu Sharingan on the moon and pull the whole world into the Tsukuyami world? After reading these pages of information, the most shocking thing was that the Akatsuki organization had accumulated nearly 2 years of revenue of Woodleaf Village or even more. No wonder a mere Akatsuki organization from the Rain Country. At this moment, even the 5 great ninja villages have to unite to fight against them. The Akatsuki organization scheme is too big. When other people are just fighting for the interests of their village and their country, the Akatsuki organization has already put the whole world into their own action. If you want to say what kind of thing can make people grow continuously and reach the peak of the spirit of all things, then it may be a simple word: ambition. It is because of the ambition in the heart that a person can make great progress. Everyone who can stand out in the sea of people, almost all have ambition that ordinary people can't reach. This kind of ambition existed in the hearts of everyone present. Minato, who sat at the top, was naturally one of the most outstanding people. But even Watergate only put his ambition in the Woodleaf Village. Watergate's ambition is to say that he hopes that the Woodleaf Village can really become the #1 force in the ninja world. Because Watergate knows that there are many strong people in this world who are not worse than him or even far stronger than him. Not to mention far away, Nangongja, who was now semi-secluded in Konoha, was an existence that he wasn't sure he could defeat. It is precisely because of this understanding, Watergate has the ambition to be controlled. But in the Akatsuki organization, whether it is the members who have been eliminated or the existing members who are still in the ninja world, almost all of them are people who don't control their ambitions at all. For his ambition, Sasori can directly betray the ninja village and turn the Kazekage corpse of his ninja village into a puppet. For his ambition, Dara can even give up his life to verify his ultimate art. As for the rest of the people, each one of them is also wantonly indulging the desire in their hearts. Once people lose their self-control, what is the difference between them and a beast? And at this moment, the Akatsuki organization is a terrifying beast that has completely lost the ability to control itself, and the 5 great shinobi villages have joined forces to eliminate this terrifying beast that is full of desire and controlled by its own ambition. I believe that after seeing this information, you have already understood that this war is inevitable, right? Looking at all the elders and ninjas in front of him who fell into silence, Watergate said with a dignified expression, "Yes, this war has really come to an inevitable situation. Even if the 5 great ninja villages can tolerate the actions of the Akatsuki organization in the 5 Kages Convention, will the Akatsuki organization give up? Since they can put forward such a plan to pull the whole world into the genjutsu space, naturally, they will not lack the preparation to turn such a plan into a reality. Against such an organization that can be said to be a threat to the whole world, no capable and responsible person will stand by and do nothing. In that case, let's fight." Sitting in his seat, Mito threw the information in his hand on the table in front of him and said with a cold tone, Mito has not always been a mouthpiece that communicates with the Woodleaf clan forces and the Hokage forces. In the past, Mito Xianxia Chun, Shimura Danzo, and 3 generations Hokage Yuan Fei were all disciples of the second Hokage Senju Tobarama. If he didn't have enough temperament and talent, how could Mito become a disciple of the second Hokage? It is undeniable that indulging in politics over the years has indeed changed Mito temperament, but no matter how much he has changed, just like Shimura Danzo who has been crowned as a Woodleaf rebel, as long as someone threatens the stability and safety of the Woodleaf clan, Mito will not hesitate to show his anger. Seeing Mito who is already old but full of a towering momentum at the moment, the mentality of many ninjas who were still filled with sadness quietly changed. As a ninja, when they chose such a path, they already knew that life and death will be the norm in their lives from now on. Although sometimes they are affected by the emotions in their hearts, in fact, everyone is prepared to die on the battlefield. And this time is different from the past. In the past, they killed people to protect their own village, but at this moment, they are actually fighting to protect the future of the world. Such a battle with a somewhat noble color is actually a kind of glory for everyone who participates in it. Don't be afraid of war. Don't be afraid of war. One by one, the ninjas slowly said such low and firm words. Minato looked at the ninjas in front of him, and his eyes flashed with a trace of confidence. These resolute soldiers belong to him, they belong to Konoha's strength. Chapter 5:31. Such a mobilization meeting also took place in the other 4 villages of the 5 major villages. At this moment, the Kage of the shinobi village exerted his charm as the leader to the extreme. Almost all the ninjas in the 5 major villages were infected by such an atmosphere. Now, they're not fighting for their own interests, they're fighting for the future of the shinobi world. This kind of mood made everyone excited. However, there was a place that didn't have such a lively atmosphere. On the contrary, it was rather cold and gloomy. Konan was sitting in her room, staring at the window of her room with a slightly empty look in her eyes. Outside the window, it was raining. The rain country was such a country that even the gods couldn't help but weep. After Nagato's death, Konan received the news from Jiraiya. As a person who has experienced a lot of things, Konan naturally knew that Nagato's death was definitely not done by the people inside the Woodleaf. After all, as long as Nagato was alive, it was a kind of suppression on her, and the people inside the Woodleaf weren't so short-sighted. Konan also slowly set her eyes on the masked hoodlum, who had been looking very restless all this time. He called himself Uchiha Madara. He declared war on the entire shinobi world, and announced the Eye of the Moon project, that was completely different from the previous plan. Now, Hoodlum has completely put himself in the position of the leader of the Akatsuki, and what made Konan even more surprised was that this transition of power was unusually smooth, with almost no waves. It seems that Hoodlum has already taken control of the Akatsuki in his own hands. Poor Konan and Nagato thought that the Akatsuki was still the original Akatsuki, but they didn't expect that Hoodlum had already unknowingly turned the Akatsuki into a sword in his hand. Moreover, to be able to sneak into the Woodleaf and quietly take Nagato's life, in Konan's knowledge, only Hoodlum, who is proficient in space ninjutsu, and who can perfectly integrate himself into the environment, can do this. After learning the news of Nagato's death, Konan has been hiding in her room and didn't want to go out, and Hoodlum's actions didn't make Konan care so much. For Konan, the shinobi world and peace didn't matter that much. What Konan cared about was Yahiko and Nagato, her 2 companions who had gone through hardships with her. Now that the 2 most important people to her have left the world, Konan couldn't help but be confused. His eyes, which were originally a little numb, were now burning with a ball of fire. It was a fire that burned with hatred and sadness as fuel. The target of this flame was Hoodlum, the one who took Nagato's life in Konan's heart. On the other hand, Hoodlum and Ju were in a room. They seemed to be discussing something. "How is it, did you get it?" Hoodlum said slowly as he looked at extinction in front of him. Facing Hoodlum's question, Zhu didn't display her talkative nature. Instead, she fished out a small bottle from her pocket. The bottle wasn't big, but it was hard to take one's eyes off what was inside. Because in such an ordinary bottle, there was a legendary eye that belonged to the Rikudo Sennin, the Rinnegan. Zetsu went to the Woodleaf, and Hoodlum went to the 5 Kage tournament. This was the plan that the two had discussed before. Since Watergate was going to participate in the 5 Kage tournament, then the Rinnegan, which would make anyone jealous after seeing it, would definitely not be on his body. Therefore, there was a high probability that Watergate would put the Rinnegan in a safe place. Therefore, after Hoodlum and Zetsu discussed, they decided that one person would go to the Woodleaf to get the Rinnegan, and the other person would go to the 5 Kage tournament to deter the 5 Kages. In comparison, Zetsu was more suitable for such an infiltration mission, and Hoodlum also hoped that he could take Sasuke to the 5 Kage tournament and force Sasuke to use his Manjikyu Sharingan beyond his limits, so that Sasuke could have Manjikyu Sharingan as the sharpest sword in his hand. When Sasuke was controlled by Danzo and was under the influence of Kodo Amatsukami, Hoodlum had been watching, but because of the threat of Nangongja and Watergate, Hoodlum didn't dare to show his figure. Although Hoodlum was disappointed that there was no way to sharpen Sasuke into the sharpest sword in his hand, Sasuke was just a chess piece that Hoodlum arranged for a moment, so it didn't make Hoodlum feel that regretful. Hoodlum looked at the bottle in Zetsu's hand with only one Rinnegan in it. He looked at Zetsu and asked, "Why is there only one Rinnegan? Where is the other Rinnegan?" Just like the Sharingan, only a pair of Rinnegan is the real sage's eyes with the power of the 6 paths Sennin. Why did Zetsu take out only one Rinnegan? Watergate is very vigilant. He didn't put the 2 eyes in the same place. I only found 1 eye. Zetsu looked at Hoodlum and said coldly. Obviously, Zetsu should be completely dominated by Black Zetsu at this moment. Hoodlum looked at Zetsu, and Zetsu looked at Hoodlum. The two didn't speak for a long time, as if there were thousands of thoughts in their hearts. But suddenly, the two of them stopped looking at each other. Zetsu glanced at the door of the room, then slowly walked to the wall and directly merged his body into the wall and disappeared. Hoodlum put the Rinnegan that Zetsu just handed to him in his arms. After adjusting his mood, Hoodlum looked at the door of the room he was in with a little indifference. Paper release, God's Origami Jutsu. Conan's cold voice sounded outside the room, and the door of the room was constantly making cutting sounds. In a moment, the steel door was directly cut into pieces. Conan, what do you mean by this? Hoodlum asked as he looked at Little Nan, who was controlling paper. Little Nan's body had turned into paper and was ready for battle. After hearing Hoodlum's question, Conan didn't explain much, but directly controlled paper to attack Hoodlum. She didn't come here to seek an answer. She came here just to send the person who may have taken Nagato's life to Yellow Spring. It's that simple. Chapter 5:32. Looking at Conan who was silently attacking him, Hoodlum's expression became more and more unsightly. In all fairness, Hoodlum didn't want to have a falling out with Conan. After all, most of the core members of Akatsuki had fallen. Now the core members of Akatsuki were only Ju, Conan, Kisame, and Hoodlum himself. Conan herself, no matter if it was fighting ability or support ability, she was very outstanding. If possible, Conan could also help Hoodlum to complete his plan. However, looking at the current Xiaonan, she was completely ignoring him. Her only thought was to kill him. Even if Hoodlum had a glib tongue, there was no room for him to use it, right? A trace of impatience flashed in Hoodlum's eyes as he watched Paper, who was under Conan's control, continuously attacking him. His hands were constantly forming hand seals, the chakra in his body flowed in a special way, and a ninjutsu was completed. Fire release, Great Fireball Jutsu. There were many fire release ninjutsu widely spread in the ninja world, but only one fire release ninjutsu was frequently used by the Uchiha clan, and even slowly crowned as the signature fire release ninjutsu of the Uchiha clan. And this fire release ninjutsu was the Great Fireball Jutsu used by Hoodlum at this moment. Looking at Hoodlum's skillful use of the great fireball jutsu, Conan's eyes flashed with a trace of dignity. Although her paper-release ninjutsu had undergone a lot of modifications and had a certain degree of fire and water resistance, but looking at the power of Hoodlum's fire-release ninjutsu, her paper-release ninjutsu was still very easy to ignite. Paper release, infinite paper shuriken jutsu. Conan's hands quickly formed hand seals, and a ninjutsu that was frequently used by Conan was directly released. In general battle, infinite paper shuriken jutsu was used to contain the enemy and didn't have any particularly outstanding attack ability. But this time, the paper shuriken created by infinite paper shuriken jutsu floated in the air under Conan's control and quickly rotated. As the paper shuriken spun faster and faster, gusts of wind surrounded the paper shuriken. Seeing that the wind pressure had accumulated, Conan immediately controlled the paper shuriken to shoot towards Hoodlum. The huge burning fireball was surrounded by wind pressure, and under the continuous attack of the paper shuriken, it was soon fragmented into pieces. However, the paper shurikens didn't stop attacking. They continued to attack Hoodlum. Looking at the small space around him, Hoodlum knew that he couldn't display his full strength in such a place, so he directly used his space ninjutsu to escape into the void. "You want to fight me? Then come out." After saying that, Hoodlum completely disappeared. "Go outside?" "That's exactly what I wanted." Looking at the place where Hoodlum had disappeared, Conan's eyes flashed with an indescribable light. How could he come here unprepared to fight someone who is proficient in space ninjutsu? The advantages and disadvantages of Hoodlum's space ninjutsu have been engraved in Conan's heart. Before coming here, Conan was fully prepared. After opening the door, a pair of paper wings appeared on Conan's back. With a flap of the wings, Conan's figure floated in the air. At this moment, Hoodlum was standing at the top of a building in Amigakure. After discovering that Conan saw him, Hoodlum's figure disappeared again and then appeared in the next place. Obviously, Hoodlum was leading the way for Conan. When Conan saw Hoodlum deliberately moving towards the direction outside the village, her heart was slightly relaxed. After all, the current Amigakure can be said to be developed by her and Nagato together. If Conan destroyed the crystallization of her and Nagato's creation because of fighting, although Conan wouldn't be soft-hearted, she would still be slightly sad. Conan waved her white wings behind her and flew in the direction that Obito was leading her. Soon, Conan had already caught up with Hoodlum, who was deliberately slowing down. The two still didn't exchange any words and directly fought. The snow-white paper and the orange flame collided in the sky. Sometimes the flame swallowed the white paper and turned it into a pile of ashes, and sometimes the white paper extinguished the flame and turned it into a wisp of smoke. The battle between the two looked particularly fierce, but when Hoodlum wasn't paying attention, small scrolls secretly fell from Conan's body. After these scrolls touched the ground, they immediately merged into the ground and disappeared. At this moment, Hoodlum was too tired to deal with Conan's paper-release ninjutsu, so he didn't seem to notice this small detail. "Tell me, did you kill Nagato?" Conan looked at Hoodlum standing opposite her and finally said the first sentence since the battle. Sure enough, it was because of Nagato? Facing Conan's question, Hoodlum was silent at this moment. Because Hoodlum felt that no matter what answer he gave, it wouldn't change Conan's mind to kill him. In that case, why should he explain to Conan? It would be a waste of his momentum, and it would be useless. Since the battle had already begun, there was naturally no reason to end it casually. Looking at Hoodlum, who was silent, but constantly launching ninjutsu in his hand, Conan slowly shook her head. Although she didn't answer, Conan didn't need Hoodlum's answer. "Hoodlum, or Uchihamadar, I don't care who you are, but you deceived me and Nagato, that is an indisputable fact. So, I will kill you here." Conan's hand made a hand seal, which Hoodlum was very familiar with, because most of the seal scrolls were made after making such a hand seal, and then infusing chakra into it to unlock the seal. At this moment, after Conan made the hand seal, the chakra in her body constantly poured into the ground. Obviously, Hoodlum could perceive that there were many things underground that didn't exist in the ground. Paper release, God's origami jutsu. The god's origami jutsu is a ninjutsu that can manipulate paper at will. Usually, Conan often manipulates white paper that has been processed to a certain extent, but in the ninja world, there is an extremely common paper ninjutsu, that is, explosive tag. Chapter 5:33. Hoodlum would usually use two methods to evade attacks. The first was to transfer his body into an alternate dimension, causing all attacks to miss. The second was to turn his body into a void, allowing all attacks to pass through his body. Conan has worked with Hoodlum for a long time. Although Hoodlum usually deliberately hides his ability, Conan still found his weakness through her own observation and information collected from various channels. Transferring his body into a different space, as long as Hoodlum can successfully do this, he will be in an almost invulnerable state. Although this ninjutsu is almost invulnerable, it has a fatal flaw. Hoodlum actually needs time to completely absorb his body into a different space. This time is just a blink of an eye for ordinary people, but it is a huge disadvantage for powerful ninjas. As for the second ability, the ability to turn one's body into a half-materialized, half-ethereal state didn't exist for a period of time. However, there was a strict time limit to turning one's body into an ethereal state. Conan does not know how long the specific time limit is, but according to Hoodlum's past records, this technique can only last for about 4 or 5 minutes. To counter Hoodlum's weakness, Conan has finally prepared a method that is highly likely to capture Hoodlum and even kill him. Under Xiaonan's control, explosive talismans, which had runes engraved on them, shot out from the ground. Normally, only a few explosive talismans would be used in a normal battle, but now, they were like an endless sea. One of the 7 swords of Kirigakure, the explosive sword, Flying Foam, was only added with an explosive tag on the back of the sword. During the battle, the explosion of the explosive tag could be controlled, and it became a famous sword in the ninja world. Now, there are more than hundreds of explosive tags in front of him. At this moment, the endless explosive talismans were like surging waves that carried tremendous power as they came crashing towards him. A sense of crisis quietly crept into Hoodlum's heart. He must leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, once he is involved in the explosion of these explosive tags, he will likely die. It was this sense of danger that prompted Hoodlum to activate his spatial ability. Circles of spatial ripples formed around Hoodlum's body. Seeing Hoodlum start to use his space transfer ninjutsu, Conan immediately transferred a large amount of chakra from her body to her legs. Under the stimulation of chakra, Conan speed soared in a short time. With Xiaonan's improved physique, she was able to use body blink easily. She stood in front of Hoodlum, who was using space teleportation, and an explosive talisman flew into her hands. Trying to escape? In your dreams. Xiaonan stuck the explosive talisman on Hoodlum's mask while he was casting spatial transference. Hoodlum hesitated. A part of his body had entered the alternate dimension while another part of his body remained in the real world. This situation made Hoodlum's body slightly sluggish, and he was unable to nimbly dodge Xiaonan's explosive charm. The instant the explosive talisman came into contact with Hoodlum's mask, it exploded. Xiaonan's body instantly turned into pieces of white paper and disappeared. Paper clone jutsu? Hoodlum almost instantly recognized the method Xiaonan used to dodge the explosion, but at this moment, he didn't have the mind to care about Xiaonan. The explosive talisman itself was very powerful. If hit at close range, it would be the same as being hit by a C-grade or B-grade fire release ninjutsu. Although Hoodlum's mask was made of special materials, the upper half was still blown to pieces. Due to the powerful impact of the explosive talisman's explosion, a part of Hoodlum's body that had entered the alternate dimension was directly dragged out. Xiaonan didn't give Hoodlum the slightest chance to react. She directly detonated the endless sea of explosive talismans. Boom, 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 boom. In the blink of an eye, a large number of explosive talismans had started to explode one after another. The powerful shockwave of the explosion and the power generated from the explosion almost made the drizzling rain of the country of rain disappear without a trace. Looking at Hoodlum, who was completely caught in the explosion range, Xiaonan's eyes were slightly emotional. Is everything finally coming to an end? After killing Hoodlum, whether it's the Akatsuki or the dream of bringing peace to the ninja world, it will be submerged in the long river of history. Since Hoodlum has declared war on the 5 major countries, the 5 major countries won't easily let go of the Rain Country and Akatsuki. I only hope that the 5 major countries can change in this war and don't hurt the innocent lives. 600 billion explosive talismans. This was the last resort of the Akatsuki after Conan spent almost all of their savings. These explosive talismans were originally used by Nagato as a last resort to perish together with a strong enemy, but now they were used by her to deal with Hoodlum. As time passed, the explosion became more and more violent, but no matter how many explosive talismans there were, they would eventually run out. With the disappearance of the last explosion, the powerful explosion that shook the earth finally came to an end. Looking at the scorched earth that had sunk nearly 2 inches due to the explosion, Xiaonan's eyes were full of complex emotions, and she didn't speak for a long time. Even if it was Hoodlum, in such an explosion, wouldn't even have his bones left? Conan slowly untied the black Akatsuki's uniform with red clouds on it, then casually threw her uniform on the charred ground. Akatsuki was still not her home. Along with the Akatsuki's uniform slowly falling down, Conan nevertheless felt a kind of ice-cold sensation suddenly coming from her abdomen, and a kind of blazing sensation was emitted from the place where the ice-cold sensation came from. Am I being attacked? Lowering her head, Xiaonan looked at her abdomen, and saw the tip of a kunai directly extending from her abdomen. It's really dangerous being able to force me to this point. You should be proud. Xiaonan, accompany Yahiko and Nagato to sleep in the Yellow Spring. But don't worry, in the world of the Eye of the Moon, you can still be happy, carefree, and enjoy the peace you dream of. Chapter 5:34. Conan tried her best to turn her head so that she could barely see Hoodlum, who was standing behind her and piercing her abdomen with kunai. Hoodlum was wearing a mask that only revealed his right eye. At this moment, the upper half of the mask was shattered by the explosive tag that Conan pasted on the mask. Although Conan still couldn't see Hoodlum's face because of the lower half of the mask and the bandage wrapped around his forehead, it was enough for Conan to see Hoodlum's eyes at this moment. In Hoodlum's right eye was still the familiar 3-tomo Sharingan that Conan was very familiar with. In Hoodlum's other eye that had been hidden under the mask, a completely white eyeball appeared in it. Conan had never seen such an eyeball before, but if Sasuke appeared here, he would immediately understand what happened just now. A completely white eye without any color. This was the appearance of the Sharingan after using Izanagi. Indeed, Hoodlum's illusory time was actually limited, which was 5 minutes. The 600 billion explosive tag that Conan used before exploded for more than 10 minutes. Generally speaking, Hoodlum couldn't be unscathed in it. However, Hoodlum hid a 3-tomo Sharingan in his left eye. When he realized that he couldn't protect himself through conventional means, Hoodlum also made a prompt decision to use Izanagi to reverse reality while he was still able to make himself semi-illusory. Turning all unfavorable factors into favorable factors, such an effect seemed a bit illusory and unspecific, but Hoodlum still used this ability to strengthen his semi-illusory state, allowing him to survive this earth-shaking explosion. Although Hoodlum was unscathed, he didn't immediately attack Conan. Instead, after finding that Conan had relaxed, Hoodlum suddenly appeared from the void where he was hiding and directly stabbed Conan's abdomen. Looking at Hoodlum's face that was less than 1/3 exposed, Conan's eyes widened, and her mouth opened and closed. She seemed to want to say something, but she couldn't say a word for a long time. Hoodlum glanced at Conan and didn't say anything. Instead, he pulled out the kunai that he had stabbed deep into Conan's abdomen. Originally, due to the existence of kunai, the wound did not bleed profusely, but at this moment, after coming into contact with the air, the blood could not stop flowing out. A large amount of crimson liquid gushed out from Xiaonan's abdomen. Drops of crimson blood splattered on the charred ground. Black and red were known as the most matching colors in this world. At this moment, Xiaonan, who had long purple hair, was lying weakly on the ground. This scene unexpectedly had an indescribable beauty. But at this moment, no one could see such a beautiful scene. Although Xiao Nan's consciousness was a little hazy, her body was still very clear. In fact, her senses were even sharper than before. The smell of soil and blood rushed into Xiao Nan's nose. This smell was very similar to the smell of the country of rain during the war when Xiao Nan was still young. In a trance, Xiao Nan seemed to see two figures standing in front of her. She tried hard to identify the two tall and familiar figures in front of her, but when she focused her eyes, she found that the two tall figures had turned into two rather childish children. One of the children had orange hair, while the other had red hair that covered most of her face. Both of them stretched out their little hands towards Xiao Nan and said together, "Brother Xiao Nan, I'm sorry, Brother Xiao Nan. Come on Xiao Nan, we've been waiting for you for a long time." Xiao Nan raised her hand, only to find that her hand was no longer as big as she was familiar with. Instead, it had become small and tender. "I'm coming." Nagato and Yahiko. Xiao Nan's voice also turned into the soft voice she had when she was a child. It was no longer as cold as ice. Hearing Xiao Nan's response, Nagato and Yahiko had dazzling smiles on their faces. At this moment, Nagato no longer had the look of deep hatred, and Yahiko no longer had the feeling of carrying the whole world on his back. Xiao Nan also didn't have the stiff feeling of forcibly closing her heart. Everyone was no longer as mature as they were after experiencing hardships. Everyone had finally returned to the difficult but exceptionally satisfying and happy days from before. After eliminating Xiao Nan, Hoodlum walked step by step into the Rain Village. After passing through many checkpoints and hidden doors, Hoodlum walked to the most secretive place in the Rain Village. Deep underground, except for the people that Hoodlum could trust, no one knew that there was such a building under the Rain Village. The ghetto mazo that was used to seal the tailed beasts was now in this space. Ju, who was half black and half white and wrapped in a huge pitcher plant, was now standing in front of the ghetto mazo. "Is everything done?" Zetsu was an excellent perceptive ninja, and when Hoodlum walked in, he didn't deliberately hide his figure. Therefore, although Zetsu didn't look at Hoodlum with his eyes, he was very sensitive to Hoodlum's presence. Zetsu turned around and saw Hoodlum's somewhat embarrassed appearance. After all, Hoodlum's mask was directly smashed in half, and the Sharingan in his left eye was also pale white. "It seems that Xiao Nan still caused some damage to you." Zetsu's voice had a bit of sarcasm, and such a tone made Hoodlum extremely uncomfortable. With a bit of impatience, Hoodlum said to Zetsu, "It doesn't matter, go prepare for the eye transplant surgery. Now that Nagato is dead, there is a flaw in our plan. Transplant the Rinnegan into my eye, and then we'll think of another way to resurrect Uchiha Madara." Hoodlum was the one who called himself Uchiha Madara in the 5 Kages tournament, and he seemed to be very familiar with Uchiha Madara. However, at this moment he spoke in a completely different tone. Chapter 5:35. Hearing Hoodlum's sudden proposal that was completely different from the previous plan, Zetsu's eyes suddenly became sharp. For Zetsu, although Hoodlum is still somewhat useful, Uchiha Madara is more important. "Hoodlum." "No, there are no outsiders here, I'll just call you by your real name. Uchiha Obito, you should know who I am. White Zetsu is a clone cultivated from Senju Dakuma's cells, and I'm a consciousness born from Madara-sama's Rinnegan. For me, nothing is more important than the perfect resurrection of Madara-sama. Now you're telling me that we should give up on the perfect resurrection of Madara-sama with Geto." As Black Zetsu spoke, the white egg-shaped objects hanging from the Geto golem's body began to move. They looked like flower buds or fruits. Like flowers blooming, the white egg-shaped objects opened one by one. White Zetsu that looked similar to White Zetsu appeared. White Zetsu's eyes were blank. Although these mass-produced White Zetsu weren't that strong, each of them was close to the strength of an elite Chunin. Although in front of Hoodlum or Uchiha Obito, these White Zetsu who only had the strength of an elite Chunin weren't that difficult to deal with, Obito had to explain in order to avoid unnecessary trouble. Black Setsu Nagato is dead now. The only person who is qualified to use the Rinnegan is me, who has the blood of the Uchiha clan and Senju Takuma's Mokutan cells, but now is the time of war with the shinobi world. Not to mention that I only have one Rinnegan. Even if I have two, I can't use Geto to resurrect Uchiha Madara. This is not because I cherish my life, but because such a battle needs me, and it has to be me. Do you understand? Obito slowly took off the half-broken mask on his face, revealing his real face. It was a face that was very different from ordinary people. After all, during the Third Shinobi World War, Obito was ambushed at Kanobi Bridge, and the right half of his body was smashed into meat paste by the Rock Shinobi. If it wasn't for the fact that he was seriously injured at the place where the old Uchiha Madara was hiding, Obito would have died there, as Kakashi thought. You've thought it through, you still have the talisman in your heart. Don't throw your life away because of a moment of unwisdom. Would Uchiha Madara trust a descendant who was related to him by blood? Of course not. Uchiha Madara is someone who doesn't even care about his own family as long as he can make himself stronger. Madara has no credibility at all for the mere connection between the two of them. What Madara needs is not a good enough descendant, but a tool that can faithfully carry out his plan. Therefore, in the heart of Uchiha Obito, Madara transplanted a talisman that can control Obito's life and death. The method of controlling the talisman was also taught by Uchiha Madara to Black Zetsu, who was derived from his consciousness. At this moment, Black Zetsu was using this talisman to threaten Obito, and Obito's eyes flashed with displeasure. However, Obito knew that his life was indeed in the hands of others. Over the years, Obito hoped more than once that he could erase the talisman in his heart, but how could Uchiha Madara leave such an easy way to break it? After trying all the methods he could, Obito knew that he was indeed suppressed by Black Zetsu and Uchiha Madara. No one would let their life be in the hands of others first, and Uchiha Obito was the same, so subconsciously, Uchiha Obito's heart floated to the Rinnegan in his arms. He hoped that this was not part of the plan, and it could bring some surprises to him. There was no way to remove the talisman by conventional means, so what about the eyes of the sage? I have a plan in my heart, transplant the Rinnegan first. Hearing Obito's words, Black Zetsu finally fell into silence, and waved his hand, and all the white Zetsu who were standing on the ground merged into the soil. Come with me. Seeing that Obito had made up his mind, and from the current situation, it was the most reasonable choice to hand over the Rinnegan to Uchiha Obito. So at this moment, although Black Zetsu was not so satisfied with Obito's arrangement, he could only do this, right? The operation went smoothly, but in just a few hours, such an eye transplant operation has been successfully completed. Benefiting from the effect of Senju Takuma cells in his body, Obito recovered very quickly. Although the Rinnegan could not be opened immediately, the power of the Rinnegan could already be used by Obito. Slowly opening his hand, Obito's chakra and the power of 6 paths contained in the Rinnegan directly mixed together and gathered in Obito's palm. Before Uchiha Madara died, he taught Obito all the powerful forces he had mastered, such as yin-yang release, 6 paths technique, and so on, but he was limited by his lack of Rinnegan, so although Obito was familiar with many methods, there was no way to use them. Now that Obito finally has the Rinnegan, naturally, he wanted to experiment a little to see how far he could use yin-yang release and 6 paths technique with only one Rinnegan. Yin-yang release is not a release technique, but a combination of 2 release techniques. Yin-yang release represents the power of the mind, and yin-yang release can create an invisible form. Yin-yang release represents the power of the body, and yin-yang release can inject life into the form. At this moment, Obito was using yin-yang release to carry out the most basic creation of a lifeless existence. A white mask in the shape of a 3-tomo Rinnegan appeared in Obito's hand. Now his identity can't be exposed. After his mask was broken by Konan, Obito decided to make a mask for himself that can withstand a certain amount of attacks. It's also a good opportunity to test what kind of performance his Rinnegan can have. Chapter 5:36. Black Zetsu stood aside with a gloomy face, watching Obito experimenting with the power of his Rinnegan. His eyes flashed from time to time, making people unable to see the depth of his eyes. Did he really only find the Rinnegan? Of course not. With Black Zetsu's ability, even if Watergate really put the Rinnegan in different places, Black Zetsu can still find it. So in fact, Black Zetsu got a complete pair of Rinnegan, but out of precaution against Obito, Black Zetsu only gave one of them to Obito. And regarding the Rinnegan, although Watergate paid a certain amount of attention to it, it was just a little bit of attention. After Watergate returned to the Woodleaf village, he actually saw the report of the loss of the Rinnegan, but Watergate didn't show any other negative emotions. Because Watergate knew that such an extremely valuable thing for the Akatsuki was taken away by him, and the Akatsuki wouldn't let it go. And Watergate naturally couldn't use the powerful ninjas of the Woodleaf village to guard the Rinnegan, because in Watergate's understanding, in a real war, the ability of a person to play is limited. When Nagato suddenly attacked the Woodleaf village, it was also because of the sudden incident that the Woodleaf village didn't react in time. Otherwise, how could they have the opportunity to release the Super Shinra Tensei, which takes a long time to gather power? So Watergate only used the highest level of protection under normal circumstances to guard the Rinnegan. It would be good if he could protect it, but if he couldn't, it wouldn't have much impact. Obito didn't have time to observe Black Zetsu's reaction. He just put on the high-strength mask he just made through in-release on his head. Taking off the Akatsuki's uniform that had become slightly broken, Obito took out a large blue-gray robe from his Kamui dimension and the signature weapon of the Uchiha Madara, Uchiha fan. Since everything is ready, let's go see an old friend who is very useful to us, right? With an unfathomable smile, Obito said to Black Zetsu standing beside him. Very useful? Hearing Obito's description, Black Zetsu finally got a little interested. After all, in the original plan, the main combat power of the Akatsuki against the ninja world was the clones of the White Zetsu that just appeared. Although the number of clones is large enough, according to the current situation of the 5 villages united, the Akatsuki is still in a disadvantageous position in terms of high-end combat power. Black Zetsu's mind was agile enough, so he naturally quickly understood what to say to Obito's to say. Pharmacist's pocket? Black Zetsu didn't know why he had some impression of this person who could only follow behind Orochimaru as a follower. Hearing Black Zetsu calling his name, Kabuto's mouth made a slightly hoarse voice, which sounded somewhat similar to the voice of the dead Orochimaru. At this moment, Kabuto's appearance and aura were very similar to Orochimaru's. Even Black Zetsu and Obito felt a little uncomfortable. I didn't expect that the Akatsuki's mysterious Setsu-sama would remember the name of a nobody like me. It's really scary. Obviously, it was a very ordinary self-modesty, but at this moment, it made people feel particularly uncomfortable when it came out of Kabuto's mouth. It even gave people a feeling of, you should have remembered me. But fortunately, Black Zetsu and Obito were both thoughtful people and they didn't show their inner discomfort, but it was obvious that Black Zetsu was looking at Obito. It was as if he was telling Obito, if you don't show me the value of this guy, I can't guarantee that I won't kill this disgusting guy in the next moment. Obito and Black Zetsu have been together for so long. Naturally, he knew that Black Zetsu was a bit of a profit-oriented person, so he said to Kabuto, it seems that our Zetsu-sama doesn't recognize your qualifications to participate in this operation. Kabuto, show us your ability. After hearing Obito's words, Kabuto looked at Black Zetsu with a smile on his face, then stretched out his hand from his wide robe. The pale white hand with a little snake scale pattern began to slowly print in front of Kabuto's chest, and the chakra in Kabuto's body began to surge, and a ninjutsu was slowly being completed. Black Zetsu looked at Kabuto's hands and quickly recognized what this ninjutsu was. Created by the second Hokage Senju Tobarama, perfected in the hands of Woodleaf Snake Lord Orochimaru, and called by Sandaime Hokage as playing with the souls of the dead, Edo Tensei. So that's how it is, the so-called help is the Edo Tensei? Through the Edo Tensei, the strong who have passed away are summoned, and these strong people are used to fill the gap in high-end combat power of the Akatsuki. How long has the history of the ninja world been? And how many legendary figures have been born in this long history? By summoning these ninjas who have been drowned in the long river of ninja world, the Akatsuki will definitely not lose to the coalition forces of the 5 great ninja villages in terms of high-end combat power. However, the Edo Tensei also has a fatal drawback, that is, the reincarnated people will not be able to exert their original strength so easily. If the spiritual control of the reincarnated powerhouses is released, then they will never accept the orders of others so easily. And if the spiritual control of the reincarnated powerhouses is forced, then the reincarnated powerhouses will become less flexible puppets. Such a problem can't be solved even by Orochimaru, otherwise, when the first Hokage and second Hokage invaded Wood Leaf, they wouldn't be so easy to deal with. Could Medicine Master's pocket bring him some surprises? Chapter 537. Black Zetsu and Obito's eyes were firmly staring at Kabuto, and Kabuto also knew that this was a key test for him to participate in Akatsuki's plan. Although it seemed that there was no change, but Kabuto's heart was still stretched taut. Finally, the Edo Tensei was completed, and several coffins emerged from the soil one after another. Counting the number of coffins, there were 6 coffins at this moment. Controlling the coffin that he had summoned, he opened the seals on the coffin one by one. Finally, the expert hidden in the coffin revealed himself. "This is?" A slightly puzzled voice sounded, and a person wearing a dark red hooded robe walked out of the coffin. He stepped on the cold and damp ground with his slightly pale bare feet, as if he was sizing up the world around him. Soon, the figures of Black Zetsu, Kabuto, and Obito were projected in this man's eyes. "You've even summoned him out? Aren't you afraid that he will get out of your control and cause trouble for us?" Obito looked at the man who came out of the coffin, and a hint of vigilance flashed in his eyes. Because this man, like him, had Rinnegan formed by ripples in his eyes. This man was the former leader of the Akatsuki, Nagato. Hamadara. That's it. A trace of hatred flashed in his eyes. Nagato stretched out his slightly slender palm, and chakra quickly condensed in it, and a group of seemingly small but particularly eye-catching black brilliance was born in Nagato's palm. Shinra Tensei. Before he could finish the name of the technique, the powerful repulsion in Nagato's palm disappeared in an instant. Looking at the Yakushi Kabuto who summoned Nagato, at this moment, his chest was covered with a hand seal that didn't belong to a conventional ninjutsu. It seems that such a hand seal suppressed the Shinra Tensei that Nagato was about to release. What the hell? Nagato naturally recognized Kabuto as the one who pulled him back from the underworld. Just as he wanted to say something to Kabuto, Kabuto directly used chakra in his body to force Nagato to close his mouth. "Noisy. Now is not the time for you to speak." Nagato, who was once a god, who had the eyes of the sage, who was the commander of the Akatsuki, was now being scolded by Kabuto. Such a scene was absolutely impossible when Nagato was alive, but at this moment, all of this was happening. After scolding Nagato, a happy smile appeared on Kabuto's face. In fact, Kabuto was also a pitiful person. He was pulled to the root by Danzo at a young age and trained as a spy. Being a spy for a long time has caused Kabuto's mind to become sick. Later, because of the death of Kabuto, who was also a root ninja, Kabuto's mind collapsed. Kabuto be the root, but it was only the symptoms, it didn't solve the root cause. After he followed Orochimaru's the root. After Orochimaru was killed by Sasuke, in Kabuto's mind, he directly lost all meaning of life. So in order to explore the meaning of his existence, Kabuto conducted a series of experiments on his own body. Kabuto Yakushi transplanted the cells of Orochimaru's white phosphorus Orochi into his own body, making his body infinitely closer to that of a white phosphorus Orochi. After contracting the Snake Clan, Kabuto Yakushi came to the Earth Dragon Cave secret jutsu that Orochimaru had vaguely mentioned in front of him before, which Orochimaru was very interested in. No one knew what Medicine Master Duo experienced inside the Earth Dragon Cave, but when Medicine Master Duo came out of the cave, his body had completely changed. His skin color has become pale white, and snake-like scale-like patterns spread all over his body. If you lift the loose robe on his body at this moment, you can see a white python stretching out from his abdomen. Kabuto's nature is extremely inferior, so Kabuto found feelings of approval from others again and again. At this moment, stepping on someone who was originally high and mighty under his feet, this feeling made Kabuto feel an extreme sense of existence. The reason why Kabuto wanted to participate in Obito's plan this time was that he was indeed attracted by the Tsukuyomi perfect world described by Obito, and he also hoped that he could leave a mark of his own in the history of the shinobi world. Regardless of whether the Tsukuyomi project will succeed or not, participating in it is Kabuto's hope. You can actually control the consciousness of the person who was reincarnated by the Edo Tensei? That's a good change. Black Setsu's eyes were so sharp that he understood the variables in the moment when Kabuto controlled Nagato. At this moment, Nagato's eyes were full of anger, but his powerless appearance made Black Setsu very interested. Then I'll let you see the other existences I've prepared. With that said, Kabuto controlled the coffin he summoned through the Edo Tensei and opened the lid one by one. Sure enough, the ones who appeared were the original members of the Akatsuki. Uchiha Itachi, Sasori, Deidara, Kazu, and Nagato, who was already under the control of Kabuto. Akatsuki's members who had already died, except for the half-dead Haiden and Konan who had just been killed by Obito, almost all of them were present. But who is in the extra coffin? Even Black Setsu was a little interested. Seeing the curiosity in Black Setsu's eyes, Kabuto's expression was also a little proud. He used chakra in his body to control the lid of the last coffin to open. A person wearing red plate armor with long hair like a hedgehog was lying quietly with his eyes closed. Although a pair of eyes were tightly closed, that kind of domineering aura was still emitted from this person who had his eyes closed. The moment Black Setsu saw this person, he had already flashed to Kabuto's side. He grabbed Kabuto's neck with his hand, and Kabuto was directly lifted in the air by Black Setsu. "How dare you!" After saying such a sentence to Kabuto, Black Setsu turned his head to Obito. With a cold look in his eyes, he almost shouted the same sentence to Obito, "How dare you!" That you're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.